Outside the quiet room, a group of curious orphan children press their ears tightly against the heavy wooden door, whispering among themselves as they try to listen in. Beyond the threshold, a tall and dignified knight named Roden Heiner stands in the sunlit parlor alongside the quiet headmistress. He looks around with solemn determination, searching specifically for the small girl born on the 31st of October. Little Bunny stares up with wide pink eyes as the stern knight gently lowers himself onto one knee to meet her gaze directly. Adopting a soft and respectful tone, Roden introduces himself as the loyal knight who will be serving her from this day onward. With a hand placed over his heart, he asks if she will graciously come away with him. A sudden spark of pure astonishment lights up Bunny's face as the truth dawns on her all at once. The long-awaited day her nanny always talked about has finally arrived. Her heart leaps with boundless excitement, realizing that this night is the exact opportunity her nanny promised. A grand chance to turn her humble life around completely. In her earliest memories back in the demon realm, her beloved nanny Luri cradled her gently under the midnight sky, whispering of a grand destiny. Luri explained that Bunny had to travel to the human kingdom to train, eventually leaving her at the orphanage steps with a promise that a knight would one day return to make her a noble lady. Luri had strictly instructed her to use wealthy human nobles to build up her own power once the right moment arrived. Looking closely at the handsome knight kneeling before her, Bunny is utterly amazed to see her nanny's predictions unfolding so perfectly, marveling that the promised guide has actually come to take her. Shaking her head quickly, Bunny cautions herself not to let her guard down so easily. She clearly recalls Luri's strict rule that the world is filled with sneaky scammers who must always be tested with wicked cunning. Tucking in her chin thoughtfully, the small girl hesitatingly points out to the knight that she is no lady. Roden calmly corrects her, explaining that thorough investigations confirm she undeniably has the ancient bloodline of the prestigious Udia Duchy. Bunny gasps in sheer delight and wonder, her pink eyes wide as she remembers the fabulous storybooks Luri used to read to her about legendary ducal families and grand noble estates. Those magical storybooks always featured powerful rulers adopting endearing children with tragic pasts. Staring back at the chivalric knight offering her a brand new life beyond the orphanage gates, little Bunny takes her very first step toward an incredible future, eager to see if her own magical tale is about to begin. Clarifying the incredible power and influence of a ducal family with Roden, Bunny receives his calm and firm confirmation that she is undeniably a true lady of the Udia Duchy. Overjoyed by this sudden turn of events, she clenches her small fists in pure excitement, thrilled at the prospect of stepping into a grand noble life beyond the humble orphanage walls. Yet a sudden realization halts her excitement. Remembering that she already had biological parents back home in the demon realm, Bunny worries that the Duke might mistake her for his lost birth child, just like the dramatic tropes from the storybooks Luri used to read to her about babies running away after discovering the truth. Looking up at the noble knight standing solemnly before her, Bunny briefly considers confessing the whole truth right then and there. But she halts her tongue as she recalls her nanny Luri's strict instructions about surviving among humans and securing a proper guardian. Back in the demon realm, Luri had explicitly instructed her to secure a powerful human adult upon leaving the orphanage, not for emotional comfort, but to serve as a reliable shield. With an adult guarding her, she could easily grow up until she was ready to fulfill her ultimate mission of becoming a magnificent demon king. Resolving to simply take full advantage of the powerful Duke for her own ambitious goals, Bunny wears a cunning smirk. Unlike ordinary children who long for genuine parental warmth, she feels no need for affection, planning only to harvest their resources before making a grand escape once she reaches adulthood. When Roden gently asks if she is ready to depart, Bunny instantly hides her mischievous thoughts behind a bright, innocent smile. Reaching out with complete eagerness, she places her tiny hand directly into his large palm, accepting his invitation without a second thought. Darting back into the quiet dormitory, Bunny quickly gathers her most essential treasures. she carefully packs her courage bear Mogum, her nightmare-chasing rabbit Toto, her elephant piggy bank, and most crucial of all, Luri's secret notebook, strapping her stuffed backpack tightly against her shoulders. Luri had passed down this miraculous guide with strict instructions to consult it whenever she encountered trouble, promising that its magical pages would instantly grant her the knowledge needed to resolve any human hardship in a flash. Equipped with her secret notebook and packed bag, Bunny steps out of the room with a confident smile, only to hear a sudden flurry of urgent footsteps and shouting coming straight down the corridor toward her door. Her fellow orphan friends crowd around her with tearful faces, heartbroken to hear that she is really leaving for the Grand Duchy. Watching their sweet companion prepare to enter noble life, the children snuffle back tears, wondering how they will ever manage without her cheerful presence. The tearful children shower Bunny with heartfelt praise, recalling how she raided pantries to cook them porridge and transformed hard bread into soft treats. As they desperately cling to her clothes and beg her not to abandon them, Bunny preens with delightful satisfaction, utterly thrilled by their intense devotion. When the headmistress kneels before her, Bunny smugly assumes that the director has fallen under her irresistible charm as well. However, the headmistress quickly cuts through her vanity with a stern warning, strictly forbidding Bunny from raiding pantries at the duchy, lest the guards catch her in the act. Warning Bunny that stolen food could get her into serious trouble, the headmistress softens and pulls the small girl into a gentle goodbye hug, wishing her true happiness. Bunny beams radiantly back, promising to return and make the director rich once she becomes a magnificent demon king, before eagerly running out to the carriage. Waving goodbye from the doorway, the headmistress chuckles softly at the child's comical ambition. Settling into the plush carriage seat, Bunny happily dangles her legs, reveling in the feeling of being a true storybook protagonist setting off on a grand noble adventure. Pressing her face wide-eyed against the carriage window, Bunny marvels in astonishment at the gleaming white buildings lining the pristine streets. Beside her, Rodin quietly confirms that they have entered the territory of the Udia ducal residence, unveiling the breathtaking estate that awaits her. Spotting numerous figures dressed in pristine white robes moving throughout the domain, Bunny curiously points them out to Rodin. He explains that they are personnel from the Holy Temple, whose divine duty is to purify monsters and ruthlessly annihilate all demons. A sudden truth that leaves the tiny demon girl frozen in absolute horror. Bunny vividly recalls her guardian's urgent warning that the holy knights of the temple are heartless monsters with no tears, capable of devouring a tiny baby in a single bite. Shivering with panic in the quiet carriage, she clutches her chest and desperately prays that no one ever discovers her secret demon bloodline. Stealing a tense glance at the tall man seated beside her, Bunny gathers all her courage and timidly asks Rodin if he is secretly one of those terrifying holy knights. A soft sigh of genuine relief escapes her lips when he calmly clarifies that he belongs strictly to the noble duchy of Udia. As their carriage glides through the impressive city streets, Rodin proudly recounts how his legendary house commands divine knights and prides itself on unmatched meritocracy. However, the endless talk of noble lineages and sacred duties only leaves little Bunny feeling completely dizzy and hopelessly confused by complex human words. Her brief relief turns to total dread when she learns that the heroic warrior who led the war against the demons was a direct descendant of the Udia family. Shocked to her very core, Bunny realizes in terror that she has just been adopted straight into the home of her ultimate natural enemies. Left entirely on her own inside the spacious bedroom, Bunny buries her face in her tiny hands in complete dismay. Overwhelmed by the scary truth of her new surroundings, she collapses into quiet despair, believing her fragile life in the Duke's mansion is already completely ruined before it even starts. Yet she pauses as her guardian's spirited advice echoes through her mind, reminding her that as long as she keeps her lineage hidden, no human will ever realize her true nature. With a triumphant grin, her mentor had promised that living undercover would be nothing short of a perfect crime. Taking those bold words to heart, Bunny clenches her small fists and shakes away her lingering fear. She throws her arms up with renewed energy, declaring to herself that she will guard her secret flawlessly and pull off the most legendary disguise anyone in the world has ever seen. Turning to inspect her new quarters, Bunny tiptoes across the wide wooden floor, carefully examining every corner of the room. She feels slightly disappointed by the distinct lack of shiny jewels or elegant curtains, sniffing an odd-smelling potted plant on the nightstand with a weary, lingering sigh. Remembering the fairy tales her guardian once read to her, Bunny reassures herself that every great villain must endure tough trials before rising to power. Recalling her mentor's clear instructions on establishing a new base, she confidently decides that her first official task as a demon king is to clean up. With meticulous effort, she arranges her precious stuffed animals side by side atop the soft bed, transforming the plain room into her own cozy sanctuary. She wipes her forehead with a proud smile, completely satisfied with her hard work, until a sudden knock on the door startles her out of her thoughts. Hearing the knock, Bunny excitedly scampers across the wooden floor and opens the door just a crack. She peeks through the narrow opening, her eyes wide as she catches sight of a maid waiting quietly in the corridor. The maid gazes down with a calm composition before offering a polite, respectful bow. She introduces herself with gentle formality, welcoming the young girl to the estate and expressing her pleasure at serving her. Overjoyed by the warm welcome, Bunny nearly blurts out her true identity as the future Demon King before catching herself in sheer terror. Sweating nervously, she hastily corrects herself with a wide, innocent smile, declaring that her dream is actually to become a great mage. Adoring the little girl's cute performance, the maid conceals her amused smile and adopts a formal posture. She informs Bunny that starting today, she will reside within the grand mansion as the official 52nd collateral descendant of House Udia. The complex title immediately confuses Bunny, who tilts her head while trying to comprehend the sheer scale of 52. As the maid patiently breaks down the arithmetic, the numbers spin dizzily in Bunny's head until she gives up, deciding it simply means an impossibly huge family. The maid adds that among all 52 young masters and ladies, Ist ranks as the 16th daughter of the ducal house. Bunny tries to picture her grand new standing, imagining dramatic storybook scenes of ducal heirs competing for power and affection. Realizing how low her rank truly is, Bunny drops to her knees in dramatic despair as dark clouds gather over her thoughts. She worries that with so many siblings competing for attention, her chances of standing out and building a grand reputation are completely ruined. Seeing Bunny standing frozen in complete shock, the maid tilts her head in quiet curiosity at the child's extreme reaction. She pauses for a moment, observing Bunny's bewildered expression before continuing her explanation with unwavering patience. She explains that this facility is known as the Mansion of Trials, operating like a strict boarding school to assess and educate talented descendants. To put the anxious child at ease, she promises to personally escort Bunny to all her classes during her very first week. Turning to the topic of daily coursework, the maid gently asks if Bunny possesses basic reading skills. Bunny immediately puffs out her chest with immense pride, boldly boasting that she is a total genius, which brings a quiet word of admiration from her attendant. The maid reassures her that while new students start in Class F, Bunny's literacy will allow her to advance rapidly to Class A. She further reveals that a special summoning ritual is approaching, giving Bunny a golden chance to surge up the household rankings if she summons an impressive familiar. The maid explains that divine blessing flows through House Udia, allowing true descendants to summon holy relics or sacred beasts. Upon hearing about holy magic, Bunny wears a confident, sneaky grin, already plotting how to turn the upcoming ceremony to her complete advantage. Bunny's mind instantly freezes in sheer terror as her guardian's grave warning echoes vividly in her memory. Divine blessing is the absolute polar opposite of demon magic. If a weak demon comes into direct contact with powerful holy energy, their fragile body will instantly disintegrate into a pile of ash. This terrifying realization strikes her like a sudden thunderbolt, completely shattering her brief moment of confident ambition. She clearly remembers her mentor's strict instruction to remain extremely cautious until her innate demon powers properly manifest. Plunging into total despair, Bunny turns frantically toward her attendant, her eyes wide with sheer panic. She breathlessly cries out, asking what terrible fate awaits her if the grand summoning ritual arrives, and she turns out completely unable to bring forth any holy familiar at all. Sensing the little girl's intense anxiety, the maid patiently clarifies that a summoning ritual has never once failed in the long history of the house. She soothingly reassures Bunny that carrying the Duke's noble lineage guarantees a sacred beast or relic will answer her call, completely unaware that her reassuring words only trigger a second massive crisis for the secret demon child. Courteously bowing, the attendant leaves Bunny alone to rest until mealtime arrives. The moment the heavy wooden door clicks shut, Bunny scampers across the wide wooden floor and throws herself face first onto the soft mattress in dramatic defeat. She squirms and thrashes her tiny legs in helpless frustration, burying her face deep into the fluffy bedding. Gripping her head in absolute dismay, she whimpers in total misery, thoroughly convinced that her secret cover is blown and her future in the mansion is already completely doomed. Meanwhile, high above the grand estate inside the central tower, an aide formally reports to his master that Lady Bunny has been safely brought from the orphanage exactly as commanded. Seated at his magnificent wooden desk with a pen in hand, Duke Udbreed Udia, the formidable current head of House Udia, listens attentively before calmly inquiring whether his subordinates have managed to uncover any solid details regarding the young child's true biological parents. Inside the grand Udia ducal estate, Duke Ludbreed reviews official documents while receiving a report about the young child brought from the orphanage. Learning that her parents remain completely unidentified, he bitterly reflects on his ancestors' reckless ambition to expand the family line for power. Tired of the endless complications of bloodline trials, he resolves to put an end to the tradition once and for all during his own generation. As he considers how runaway collateral branches threaten to leak the family's bloodline beyond control, Ludbreed's expression darkens. He makes a firm resolve that whoever fathered the girl and left her behind will not be spared his anger once discovered. Curious about her background, the Duke asks his subordinate what kind of child Bunny was during her years at the orphanage. The subordinate hesitates for a moment before fondly offering that she was a deeply sweet and charming young lady. In a heartwarming memory, Lulil kneels before young Bunny to give her gentle guidance before embarking on a dangerous mission. She explains that Bunny must learn to take care of herself and be a commendable child who requires no extra trouble. Unfazed by the daunting task, Bunny proudly strikes a pose and declares with absolute confidence that she is a genius. Completely enchanted by the girl's adorable confidence, Lulil bursts into joy and wraps Bunny in a tight, affectionate embrace. She showers her with praises, explaining how mean adults secretly adore a child who is both self-sufficient and sweet. Holding her close, Lulil carefully changes the topic to ask if she is keeping her mysterious secret notebook safe. Lulil reminds her that whenever she encounters trouble, she should always consult the notebook for answers. With a bright smile, Bunny excitedly demonstrates that her notebook is safely stowed away inside the tummy of her black rabbit plushie, Toto. Delighted by her cleverness, Lulil praises her while sternly reminding her that the notebook must never be revealed to anyone else. Back in the present, Bunny stirs awake in her comfortable bed, sleepy words about keeping the secret still lingering on her lips. She blinks open her starry eyes, fully awakening to face her new life in the Duke's estate. A stern yet polite maid guides Bunny down the polished corridors toward her destination. Arriving at a set of grand double doors, the maid announces that this is her classroom and warmly wishes her luck on her first day of lessons, to which Bunny replies with an eager, beaming smile. Carrying Toto safely on her back like a small backpack, Bunny steps into the spacious classroom and makes her way to an empty desk. As she settles down and opens her large textbook, the other children in the room turn their heads, whispering among themselves about the mysterious new girl who has just joined them. Expecting to easily excel, Bunny confidently imagines scoring a perfect 100 and being celebrated as a true ducal lady. However, reality crashes down when her test paper is returned completely covered in red marks, sending her collapsing onto her bed in sheer defeat. Lying dejected on her bed with a 0 score, Bunny remembers her classroom humiliation. Her teacher had marked every subject down as 0, since Luri had only taught her how to listen, leaving 0-point Bunny completely unable to read or write human words. Reaching out for her trusted black rabbit plushie, Bunny lifts Toto into the air to seek counsel. She anxiously confides that without good test scores, saving her powerful daddy will become nearly impossible, wondering what she should do next. Suddenly, Bunny gasps as a brilliant realization strikes her. With a sly wink and a renewed smile, she remembers the secret notebook hidden safely inside Toto's pouch, realizing the answers to her troubles were right beside her all along. Before she can consult the notebook, a sudden knock on the door startles her. As the maid steps into the room to check on her, Bunny curiously peeks around the heavy wooden doorframe and greets her with an energetic reply. The maid politely inquires if Bunny spent yesterday well, noting to herself how unusual it is for a young child in the mansion to adjust so effortlessly. She warmly offers her assistance whenever Bunny needs help washing or changing clothes. Planting her hands proudly on her hips, Bunny insists that she can manage everything on her own. She cutely lists her self-care routine of splashing, scrubbing, and washing her hair, triumphantly declaring herself a genius who never causes any trouble. Seeing the little girl beam with pride over being so independent, the maid feels a quiet wave of sympathy. Observing Bunny's eagerness to be a praiseworthy child, she somberly reflects that growing up too early is never a happy fate. When Bunny curiously asks why she came by, Jessie clears her throat and announces that the date for the upcoming summoning ceremony has just been scheduled. Lightning strikes Bunny's mind in complete shock as she realizes she had entirely forgotten about the event. Bunny suddenly gasps in dramatic shock as she remembers the upcoming summoning ceremony. Her maid steps closer to explain that many influential people gather for the event. If Bunny manages to summon a powerful divine beast or holy relic, someone from the main or branch families might take a liking to her and become her official sponsor. The maid gently details how a sponsor acts as a true guardian, capable of assigning personal knights and maids while showering her with allowances and gifts. Upon learning that a guardian will shield her from danger, Bunny's pink eyes sparkle with pure astonishment as the incredible word protector echoes in her mind. In her imagination, Bunny sees a doting father carrying her through grand halls, pointing out delicious sweets and buying her whatever she desires. Clenching her tiny fists with fierce determination, she vows to practice as hard as possible during the ceremony so she can win over a super strong father of her own. A wave of sympathy washes over the maid, her heart aching as she realizes how deeply this lonely little orphan misses having real parents. Pressing a hand to her chest, she gently tempers the child's expectations, reminding Bunny that a guardian is only a benefactor, not a real father, so there is no guarantee. Refusing to lose heart, Bunny strikes a proud thumbs up and beams with unwavering confidence, insisting that her irresistible popularity makes anything possible. Touched by her adorable optimism, the maid smiles warmly and offers comforting reassurance, promising that the mansion staff will always rush to her aid whenever she needs them. The moment the maid steps out and the door clicks shut, Bunny's playful demeanor turns into sharp focus. Tightening her grip on her favorite plush rabbit, she sprints across the sunlit wooden floor of her vast bedroom and dives headfirst onto the plush mattress to get down to serious business. She eagerly retrieves the mysterious brown notebook given to her by Luri, remembering the crucial advice to consult its pages whenever she faces an obstacle. Sitting among her stuffed animals, she opens the volume to reveal intricate magical runes, beaming with utter pride as she places her complete trust in her secret guide. A brilliant golden light streams from the page as handwritten text magically manifests, warmly addressing her adoption into the duchy and predicting the exact ceremony ahead. Bunny gasps in total disbelief. her eyes wide with shock as she realizes Luri foresaw her entire journey long before she ever set foot inside the mansion. Bright morning sunlight bathes the grand estate grounds as the day of the summoning ceremony finally arrives. Out in the lush courtyard, under the blooming cherry trees, smartly dressed noble children gather together in high spirits, eagerly chatting about the powerful beasts they hope to summon and the wonderful gifts promised by their parents. Arriving at the gathering grounds dressed in her special dress and hairpin, Bunny carries her dark teddy bear securely strapped to her back. Surrounded by chatting noble children, she beams with adorable, unshakable confidence, eager to show off her style. As she smirks, wondering if a whole line of eager father candidates will compete to adopt such a genius child, she notices Knight Roden walking toward her. Calling out warmly, Bunny waves and proudly boasts about adapting so well to the chaotic duchy. When the stern knight cracks a gentle smile, the watching noble children gasp in absolute shock at the unbelievable sight. Slightly embarrassed by her dramatic flair, Roden quietly listens as Bunny enthusiastically introduces her brave teddy bear Magomi. Noticing the plush toy slipping behind her, Roden kneels down to her height and softly offers to secure it. Nearby children whisper in utter disbelief, unable to comprehend the legendary Iron Wall Knight tenderly fixing a little girl's teddy bear. An official claps her hands to gather the group, signaling that it is time to set off. As the other noble children begin marching ahead, Roden turns to Bunny and gently asks if she is ready, earning a joyful shout of agreement. Striding proudly alongside her massive knight guardian, Bunny listens attentively as Roden explains their destination. They are heading to the private temple inside the duchy's main residence, a magnificent sanctuary known as the Room of Blessings. The realization that the crucial ceremony takes place inside a holy temple catches Bunny completely by surprise. Beyond the courtyard, the grand spires of the sacred complex rise majestically into the clear morning sky. Meanwhile, inside, the Duke lets out a tired sigh as he reprimands his two sons. He chides the adventurous Klein for constantly wandering outside, while scolding the quiet Kyriel for staying cooped up in his room all day. Inside the lounge, Salome Yudia gracefully interjects, slyly revealing to their father that her brother Klein has been busy gambling and fooling around. Enraged by the sudden confession, the Duke explodes in fury, scolding Klein for shaming the sacred Yudia name. Flustered by his father's harsh rebuke, Klein frantically defends himself, stammering that he only frequents those places to gather intelligence rather than for entertainment. But as the heavy silence settles in the room, his weak excuse fails to impress anyone. Desperate to shift the attention off himself, Klein turns to his quiet younger brother Kyriel, asking what brought him out of his secluded prayer room. Sipping his tea with calm indifference, Kyriel reveals he only appeared because their father commanded it, muttering that the upcoming event is nothing more than a waste of time. As news arrives that the children are on their way, Klein wonders aloud if the outcast participants, a half-beast and a stray cat, will turn out to be duds or prove exceptional. Kyriel sternly warns his brother to watch his mouth around the kids, though he cold-heartedly admits he expects very little from them. With the hour of the ceremony rapidly approaching, the siblings finish their discussion and make their way toward the main hall to witness the children's arrivals. Standing inside the bright sanctuary, the dark-haired young lord looks down with an expression of cool disinterest. He murmurs quietly to himself that he has no high expectations for whatever outcome this ceremony might bring, remaining entirely unbothered by the grand occasion. From behind, he silently watches as the priestess and veiled figures walk past the white stone columns toward the inner hall. The quiet solemnity of the holy sanctuary fills the air, setting a formal tone as the high-ranking attendees take their places for the ritual. Outside, the grand cathedral stands magnificently under the clear sky, its impressive marble facade reflecting the bright sunlight. Stepping into the massive interior, young Bunny gazes up at the lofty vaulted ceilings in awe, overwhelmed by how vast and breathtaking the hall truly is. Small and hidden among the crowd, Bunny hugs her plush teddy bear tightly to her chest. She curiously peeks out from between the taller children lined up ahead, trying her best to see what is happening near the altar without losing her spot. Upon an ornate white table rests a clear, crystal orb that glimmers softly like a teardrop in the light. The purple-haired instructor addresses the gathered candidates with firm composure, commanding everyone to stand in orderly lines and step forward only when their names are officially announced. Excited whispers fill the room as the nervous children discuss what kind of spirit or power they hope to summon. Bunny stays quiet and calm, fondly recalling the entry in her secret notebook from the night before, trusting completely that Luriel's guidance will bring her a fantastic result. Remembering the description of the pitch-black dragon that stands beside the Demon King, Bunny imagines herself soaring across the sky. In her mind, distinguished noblemen line up to compete for her affection, offering lavish praise and promising her a grand castle built entirely of chocolate if she becomes their child. She pictures her doubters standing speechless as she relaxes comfortably on a velvet throne with her formidable dragon looming behind her. In her daydream, wealthy families bow before her extraordinary talent, eagerly begging for the privilege of welcoming such a gifted child into their lives. Coming back to reality, Bunny wears a triumphant smile as her cheeks flush with excitement. She can hardly contain her joy as she looks forward to taking flight into the clouds with her future dragon as soon as the test is over. A sharp footstep echoes across the marble floor as a high-ranking official steps to the center of the sanctuary. Clearing his throat, he announces the grand entrance of Duke Ludbreed Udia, alongside Captain Klein of the Holy Knights, Saintess Salam, and young Lord Kyriel. The assembled nobles stand at strict attention on both sides of the hall as the formidable, silver-haired Duke leads his family inside. Bunny watches intently as the high-status figures pass by, but her eager expression suddenly shifts to complete bewilderment when an unexpected twist leaves her utterly confused. Bunny freezes in complete shock as a sudden, solemn quiet sweeps across the sanctuary. Not wanting to attract any unwanted attention during such a grand ceremony, she stares ahead wide-eyed, taking in the vast white cathedral and the distinguished figures gathered near the altar. She quickly bows her head alongside the other noble children lined up in the center aisle. High above them on the balcony, Duke Ludbreed gazes down with a cold, unreadable expression, while Bunny flails frantically in place, overwhelmed by the intense atmosphere of the room. The ritual officially begins as a hand rests upon the clear glass sphere, causing a dazzling burst of radiant divine light to sweep across the sanctuary floor. Saintess Salam and the surrounding temple attendants observe closely as bright holy energy wakes inside the crystal artifact. Shimmering flowers of light bloom, the base of the orb, as the purple-haired instructor calmly addresses the gathered crowd. He instructs all the children to remain in orderly lines and step forward only when their names are officially announced to place their hands inside. Young Master Andrew is summoned first, stepping up eagerly as a blinding white flash erupts from the crystal. Recalling teacher Luriel's secret warning that potent divine magic turns weak demons to ash, Bunny instantly panics, terrified that her tiny body will dissolve into dust right where she stands. Ducking behind Captain Klein's heavy white cape for shelter, Bunny quickly reassures the knight that she is entirely fine. When she realizes the holy light did not harm her at all, her terror turns into smug pride, leaving the captain completely bewildered as she smirks about her hidden strength. The testing continues smoothly as candidate after candidate manifests a unique power before the crowd. Young Master Ian successfully summons a lively orange cat spirit. Miss Sarah conjures a delicate floral bracelet, while other children call forth soaring hawks, gentle fawns, and glowing magic blades. The instructor pauses with a subtle look of hesitation before calling the next candidate forward. A heavy, expectant silence falls across the sanctuary as young Lord Kyriel steps out from the line, his striking golden eyes burning with quiet, unwavering intensity as he approaches the altar. Scornful murmurs immediately ripple through the audience of noble spectators seated along the pews. They whisper harsh, judgmental comments about a child linked to beasts bringing disgrace upon a sacred house, while Bunny perks up her ears, carefully listening to every insult traded in the room. As Kyriel marches calmly past her toward the platform, Bunny inwardly questions why beast summoning is treated like something shameful. Sensing his formidable composure, she clenches her fists in shock, suddenly viewing him as a dangerous rival who might threaten her own ambitious plans. Stopping directly before the marble pedestal, Kyriel faces the instructor without showing a single trace of doubt or hesitation. Under the watchful gaze of the high priestess and noble attendees, he extends his hand and calmly submerges it into the glowing crystal orb. As Kyriel submerges his hand into the glowing crystal artifact, the surrounding sanctuary falls completely silent. He stands quietly before the purple-haired instructor, remaining motionless as divine magic stirs beneath his palm. Bunny grins with excitement when she is announced for the very last turn of the ceremony. But as 10, then 20 long minutes pass with Kyriel still at the altar, her excitement fades into complete physical exhaustion. Unable to hold herself up any longer, Bunny collapses directly onto the cold marble floor. A startled Captain Klein quickly bends down to check on her, gently carrying the weary child over and seating her safely in a wooden chair. Kyriel keeps his hands steady, lowering his head as pure energy begins to surge around the table. Wisps of white mist stream out from the pedestal's base before erupting into a breathtaking burst of brilliant light. A magnificent white king snake manifests within the radiant glow, winding its long body elegantly around Kyriel. With the formidable creature resting gently over his neck, he turns his calm golden eyes toward Bunny, resting near the entrance. Bunny gapes in utter astonishment, overwhelmed by how powerful and impressive the giant snake looks. Seeing him stand tall after such an extraordinary manifestation, she resolutely marks him as her ultimate rival in this testing hall. Vicious murmurs instantly ripple through the noble spectators, who sneer at the ominous serpent and insult Kyriel as an unwanted half-blood who does not belong in a grand ducal family. Their bitter chatter comes to a sudden halt as a heavy fist slams furiously onto an armrest. Standing high above on the balcony, Duke Ludbreed gazes down with icy, sharp eyes, sternly reprimanding the nobles for gossiping so loudly in his presence. The entire sanctuary turns deathly quiet, paralyzed under the Duke's oppressive, commanding aura. Cruel whispers spread through the room as the nobles sneer at Bunny, calling her an outsider who doesn't belong in the Grand Duke's household. A heavy fist slams down in anger, demanding to know if a creature neither human nor beast should truly be taken in. Leaving the crowd in tense silence, the Grand Duke cuts through the commotion with a chilling look, sternly warning the nobles about making so much noise in his presence. Instantly, the gossiping noblewomen snap their fans shut and shrink back into their seats, terrified of provoking his anger any further. As the young boy with a white snake around his shoulders steps forward, Bunny remembers that adult humans hate loud noises and hastily covers her mouth. Unable to resist her curiosity, she tiptoes quietly across the floor and leans in close, staring wide-eyed at the creature. Observing the newcomer, the boy asks what she wants, only for Bunny to beam with pure delight and ask if she can pet his giant snake. The sudden request catches him completely off guard, leaving him stammering in confusion as he reluctantly nods his consent. Bunny gently strokes the snake's head, smiling slyly as the creature leans happily into her touch. She then pats the boy's shoulder to reassure him that second place is still great, before proudly announcing that first place will belong to her, because she plans to draw a black dragon. When her name is officially called for the mana evaluation, Bunny calls out with cheerful energy and marches toward the testing desk. She boasts that she is going to pull out a super-duper giant dragon, leaving the boy standing thinking her in utter disbelief. Bunny settles into the chair at the center of the hall, clutching her small teddy bear as she gazes into the crystal sphere. The priest gently guides her through the ritual, telling her to place her hand inside to unleash her latent magic power. The moment her fingers touch the orb, Bunny's consciousness drifts up into a vast, sunlit sky. She floats weightlessly through the brilliant blue atmosphere, remembering the glowing spheres of light that appeared when the other children took their turn before her. Determined to find a legendary black flame dragon inside the orb, Bunny paddles through the clouds with untamed excitement. She glides past tiny floating specks of light, searching the endless sky for the biggest and darkest source of energy she can find. Far below a massive tree sitting in the clouds, Bunny spots a dark, mysterious orb glowing near the grass. Her eyes widen in triumph as she zooms toward it, bursting with joy as she proclaims that she has finally found what she came for. Reaching eagerly toward the dark, flickering sphere beneath the giant floating tree, Bundy lunges through the sunlit sky realm. She extends her arm with desperate determination, shouting out for her black flame dragon as her small hand finally clasps around the mysterious dark energy. But the moment her fingers touch the tiny orb, a wave of shock washes across her face. Instead of allowing her to search further, the mysterious light immediately yanks her consciousness backward, dragging her violently out of the floating sky and back into reality. Back inside the mansion hall, an unprecedented hour has elapsed while Bunny sits quietly at the ritual table. According to ancient duchy lore, longer summoning times signal an extraordinarily powerful entity, causing the surrounding nobles to murmur in anxious anticipation as they watch the clock. Watching from his ornate throne, the Duke remains silent alongside his young master as tension ripples through the collateral family members. Desperate for a prodigy to elevate their standing, the relatives fixate on the small girl, who continues to hold her plush bear against the glowing crystal sphere. A sudden, blinding flash of divine light bursts forth from the crystal, surrounding Bunny in a radiant halo. The entire room erupts into gasps of awe and excitement as the nobility leans forward in anticipation of a magnificent beast or sacred holy relic appearing before them. But as the blinding light dissipates, a tiny white object clatters onto the marble floor with a quiet bounce. The grand audience freezes in utter bewilderment as they stare down at a tiny, unimpressive quail egg rolling aimlessly across the floor. Overwhelmed by instant regret, Bunny slams her hands onto the table and breaks down into dramatic tears. She wails in sorrow over losing her black flame dragon, explaining through her sniffling that grabbing the red light forcibly pulled her back down before she could exchange it. Desperate for comfort, Bunny tumbles from her chair and dashes across the floor, clinging tightly to the young knight's leg while weeping over her terrible mistake. The priest stares in stunned embarrassment, while the Duke clears his throat to hide his own disbelief at the absurd outcome. Recalling how she was assured the summoning ritual would produce something amazing, Bunny buries her face into the knight's uniform and tearfully accuses him of lying to her. Gripping his leg with all her strength, she continues to cry over her tiny egg disappointment. Clinging frantically to the young knight's tunic, Bunny breaks down in tears over her failed attempt to summon a magnificent black dragon. With no legendary beast appearing by her side and no prospective father stepping forward to adopt her, she despairs as her grand plan to win over the ducal house shatters into pieces. Wiping her eyes, Bunny recalls the essential advice she received back at the orphanage. To survive in this cold world, she does not strictly need a duke for a father. Any dependable adult guardian who stays by her side until she grows up will do. Tightening her small hands around Luri's cape, she realizes she must keep fighting. A sudden surge of fierce determination replaces her weeping as she pumps her tiny fists in resolve. If raw magic power will not impress the nobility, Bunny decides to pivot to her next brilliant strategy for survival. She will amass an absolute fortune, convinced that no adult can ever refuse an extraordinarily wealthy child. Ignoring the disappointed whispers from the nobles lining the benches, Bunny turns her full attention toward the high thrones at the front of the grand hall. Sitting silently above the crowd, the Duke watches her every move with an unreadable expression, his sharp, glowing red eyes fixing intently on the small girl below. Realizing she needs a reliable guardian to secure her future in this intimidating realm, Bunny knows she cannot afford to sit back and wait for someone to pick her. Guided by her secret notebook's strategic advice on achieving wealth and surviving within high society, the determined 4-year-old orphan resolves to take full charge of her destiny and find a powerful protector herself. Scanning the grand cathedral hall with sharp curiosity, Bunny looks right past the rows of seated nobles and directs her eager gaze toward the high balcony reserved for the empire's elite leaders. There, seated calmly among the highest dignitaries, is a striking noble with jet-black hair and intense red eyes, whose mysterious, commanding presence immediately captures her complete focus. His jet-black hair and vivid red eyes match the exact description of a formidable guardian from her secret guide, which strictly advises picking the most handsome candidate available. Observing his elegant yet imposing composure from across the hall, Bunny becomes thoroughly convinced that this dark duke is the perfect target to become her future father and protector. High up on the grand balcony, the high priest gazes thoughtfully over the assembly, following the unprecedented appearance of the unhatched divine beast's egg. A heavy silence settles among the seated leaders as the priest rests his hand upon his gilded throne, slowly preparing to rise and officially address the gathered nobles and young candidates down below. Addressing the quiet hall, the high priest commends everyone for their hard work during the summoning ritual and announces that individual meetings will be held later. He instructs all attendees to gather at tonight's grand banquet so families can share pleasant moments together before stepping down from the balcony and bringing the morning ceremony to an early close. As the formal ceremony comes to an end, the grand cathedral hall fills with warm, emotional reunions between parents and their children. Loving fathers gently reassure tearful daughters and proud mothers embrace their accomplished sons, while Bunny stands quietly off to the side, watching the affectionate families around her, while hugging her small dark teddy bear tight. Clutching her plush bear close to her chest, Bunny stands isolated amidst the bustling crowd until a sudden intense prickle of awareness makes her flinch in surprise. Sensing a sharp and heavy gaze fixed directly upon her from high above, she turns her head nervously across the marble floor to locate where the mysterious attention is coming from. Standing right at the edge of the high balcony, the dark-haired duke looks down directly at the little girl, his expression remaining remarkably cool, stoic, and unreadable. Bunny turns her gaze upward in quiet surprise, her wide pink eyes meeting his piercing red gaze across the vast hall as an unspoken tension settles between them. Flustered by his intense, unwavering stare, Bunny instantly drops into a dramatic 90-degree bow, nearly losing her balance on her tiny feet in her eager attempt to show proper respect. Stumbling slightly before quickly straightening back up, she clutches her bear and offers a timid look, while the Duke continues to observe her every move from above. Watching intently from the high balcony, the dark-haired Duke keeps his eyes locked onto Bunny as she moves across the marble hall. He had already singled her out as an extraordinary child from the moment she first stepped into the blessing chamber, intrigued by her bold and unusual presence. Unaware of his intense fascination, Bunny trembles nervously down below, convinced that her clumsy bow completely ruined her chances with him. Contrary to his terrifying reputation, the formidable Duke secretly harbors a soft spot for adorable, genuine children. Comparing Bunny's natural, unfiltered innocence to the rigidly rehearsed noble candidates, he feels a surge of quiet amusement that proves impossible to suppress. Watching his composure crack, the high priest has to struggle to hold back his own laughter, quickly bringing the official morning ceremony to an early close. Down on the cathedral floor, Bunny trots over to the silver-haired boy, whose white serpent divine beast had drawn her near. With a cheerful smile, the little girl warmly asks him to lower his head so she can reach him. High above on the balcony, the Duke narrows his eyes in sharp focus, sensing a strangely unsettling energy radiating around Bunny that feels entirely distinct from ordinary children. That sinister, lingering aura stirs deep suspicion in the Duke, reminding him of dark demonic forces that once threatened the realm. As he watches Bunny interact with the boy, a heavy vigilance settles over him, wondering what hidden power the innocent-looking orphan might truly possess. The boy standing before Bunny is Alan, a child born between a beastkin father and a collateral woman of the Udia family. Because of his mixed blood, cruel rumors constantly whispered through noble society. accusing him of turning into a feral, bloodthirsty monster on full moon nights. Abandoned by his own parents out of fear and shame, Alan grew up completely isolated in the Mansion of Trials, treated as a cursed outcast by everyone around him. Accustomed only to fear and disgust, Alan freezes in utter shock when Bunny gently rests her small hand on his head. Instead of flinching away from his beastly aura, the little girl beams brightly, praising him for being a cool big snake and patting his hair with genuine warmth. This sudden, tender affection catches the lonely boy completely off guard, making his heart race in unfamiliar confusion. Panicking from the unaccustomed closeness, Alan flusteredly pushes her hand away and stammers out a defensive demand to know what she is doing. Bunny merely blinks her wide pink eyes before offering a soft, empathetic smile, confiding that she doesn't have parents either. Realizing that she genuinely understands his loneliness, a vivid blush instantly spreads across Alan's face, as his walls shatter under her unexpected compassion. Overwhelmed by his embarrassment and unable to process these strange, tender feelings, Alan violently recoils and shouts that he doesn't need her pity. Defensively insisting that she is just an annoying younger brat, he harshly yells at her to get lost and calls her a freak, leaving Bunny gasping in startled heartbreak. As the flustered boy turns on his heel and flees through the massive sanctuary doors, Bunny is left standing alone in the grand hall. Clutching her dark plush bear tightly against her chest, the little girl pouts her lips in adorable frustration, stubbornly telling herself that she isn't a freak and quietly insisting that it is finally her turn to be praised. Exhausted by the heavy emotional strain of navigating noble social life, Bunny clutches her small dark teddy bear close and lets out a weary sigh, wondering aloud when she will finally grow into an adult. Her pink eyes harden with quiet resolve as she refuses to let disappointment break her spirit. Clutching her dark plush bear tightly against her chest, the lonely 4-year-old turns around and begins walking across the grand cathedral hall all by herself. She pauses to look over the sunlit sanctuary, watching from afar as affectionate families gather together to celebrate their children's accomplishments. Doting fathers warmly promise to take their daughters shopping for new dresses tomorrow, while proud mothers eagerly brag about their sons' impressive magic. Watching these tender family reunions unfold, Bunny stares wistfully at the loving parents, feeling a quiet ache of isolation in her heart. Refusing to succumb to sorrow, Bunny gently reaches up with her tiny hand and pats her own head to offer herself some much-needed encouragement. She reminds herself that her dark divine beast egg is still deeply impressive, proudly reassuring herself that its mysterious potential is nothing to be ashamed of. Beaming with renewed hope, Bunny happily imagines an adorable baby dragon hatching from her egg and vows to raise it with endless care. Holding her head high, the brave orphan trots down the grand aisle, entirely oblivious to the dark Duke observing her every move from the balcony above. Safely back in her private bedroom, Bunny sits cross-legged on her bed and eagerly opens her genius-y secret notebook to seek its wisdom. Reading the newly revealed script, she gasps as the magical guide accurately predicts her anxiety about failing to secure a noble guardian during the morning ceremony. The handwritten guide offers empowering advice, urging her not to panic even if her summoning ritual didn't turn out as expected. Urging her to take full control of her fate, the notebook instructs her to directly approach the candidate she desires most, leaving Bunny staring down with wide, excited eyes at the exact words she needs to speak. Flipping through her secret notebook for advice after a failed summoning, Bunny finds a simple tip. Just approach the person she likes with a gift. She carefully ties up a small brown pouch, preparing her special offering. Strapping on her oversized black rabbit backpack, Bunny feels completely ready for her big mission. She steps forward with utter determination, focused entirely on winning over a prospective guardian. Trekking downstairs into the mansion's grand hallway, Bunny spots a group of well-dressed children chatting together near the staircase. She quietly wanders over, stepping right up to them with wide, curious eyes to make her pick. Recognizing Alan right away, Bunny candidly calls him the Big Snakey, prompting him to shout back his real name in flustered protest. He stares down at her in disbelief, bewildered by how casually she approaches him, despite expecting her to fear his true form. Noticing his reaction, Bunny turns slightly to show off, her plushy backpack swinging behind her. Alan flinches in surprise, a subtle blush dusting his cheeks as he takes in her adorable yet haphazardly thrown-together outfit. Blushing as he reaches out, Alan promises to buy her better clothes later and tells her to come along. Bunny gazes up at him in surprise as he turns his face away to hide his embarrassment. Bunny's face instantly lights up with a radiant smile, cheerfully taking his hand as they walk into the grand hall alongside the other children. Inside the glittering banquet hall, grand chandeliers illuminate a room filled with elegant, chatting guests. Standing together amidst the overwhelming crowd, Alan and Bunny look around at the bustling festivities. Sensing the overwhelming atmosphere, Alan glances down at Bunny standing beside him and firmly resolves to stay close by her side so she will not feel lost or alone. Just when Alan feels confident about keeping Bunny safe in the grand banquet hall, she suddenly slips away and marches right up to a strikingly handsome nobleman resting on a plush red chair. Resting his chin on his hand, the mysterious figure turns, his glowing red eyes toward her in quiet intrigue as she calls out to him, addressing him as a handsome mister. Posing with bright confidence, Bunny holds up 2 fingers and cheerfully announces to the high-ranking noble that she is officially on clearance sale right now. Standing in the distance, Alan stares in utter disbelief and exasperation, completely flabbergasted by her bizarre sales pitch and wondering what on earth she is doing. Rewinding to 5 minutes earlier, Bunny clutched her chest, took a calm, deep breath, and decided it was time to take matters into her own hands. Adjusting her oversized rabbit backpack with a fiercely determined expression, she promised to be right back before boldly setting off on her quest to secure a guardian. Marching away with absolute purpose, she leaves Alan behind in a flustered panic as he frantically calls out to ask where she is going. His heart sinks in sheer horror when he realizes she is heading directly toward the exclusive gathering of the direct descendants of the formidable Udia ducal house. Stepping lightly across the grand hall, Bunny resolutely approaches the quiet window seat where Lord Kyriel Udia sits in elegant solitude. Offering a simple and sweet greeting, she catches the stoic lord completely off guard, prompting him to cast a sharp side glance down at the fearless child standing right in front of him. Holding up 4 tiny fingers, Bunny proudly introduces herself, declaring her name and age without a single trace of hesitation. Across the crowded room, Alan reaches out in desperate protest, flinching in sheer terror as he watches her interact so casually with such a high-status noble. Suddenly, heavy and shadowy silhouettes loom over Alan as cold, contemptuous glares lock onto him from the surrounding guests. Feeling the overwhelming weight of their hostile judgment, his feet falter and step backward, leaving him trembling and isolated in the dark, suffocating pressure of the banquet hall. As Bunny stands right before Kyriel, astonished whispers spread like wildfire among the surrounding nobles. They murmur to one another in utter disbelief, wondering who this unknown child is and why she would ever dare walk up to Lord Kyriel Udia, the legendary leader of the Udia house. Kyriel is widely celebrated across the empire as the miracle of Udia, an unprecedented genius and apostle of God blessed with extraordinary power. Yet behind his grand title lies a dark rumor claiming he is a monster cursed by demons, a tragic destiny that has shrouded his life since the day of his birth. Despite Lord Kygriel's formidable reputation across the empire, as an arrogant noble who refuses to engage with anyone he deems beneath him, Bunny remains entirely unfazed. Surrounding guests whisper in stunned belief as they watch the uninvited child step directly into his grand presence, but she keeps her wide eyes fixed forward, quietly recalling the advice from her notebook and bracing herself to execute her bold plan. Posing bravely right in front of his grand chair, Bunny attempts to recite a prophecy of a future event, but her adorable baby talk tangles the complicated date and location names into complete nonsense. Tilting her cute head in confusion when her words do not sound quite right, she hesitates in mild dismay, only for the stoic lord to break his cold, distant expression with a subtle, amused smile. Gently correcting her botched pronunciation, Lord Kyriel listens patiently as Bunny brightens up instantly and offers a sweet, polite bow of gratitude. Stunned whispers ripple through the shocked crowd of onlookers at the unheard-of sight of the legendary genius actually smiling at a child, completely unaware, as Bunny candidly warns him that a mysterious disease will soon strike the Rubia territory and can only be cured by Manila tree sap. Kyriel blinks in quiet surprise, caught off guard by the strange yet surprisingly specific nature of her sudden warning, while Bunny beams with absolute pride in her own cleverness. Nearby nobles look on in stunned bewilderment, watching intently as the usually distant lord shifts his posture and leans forward on his seat, undeniably intrigued by the fearless little girl standing right before him. Lowering himself closer to meet her eye level, Kyriel locks his intense crimson eyes onto the fearless toddler. He thoughtfully repeats every single detail of her extraordinary claim, reciting the precise year, the exact date, the Southern Territory, and the specific tree sap required for the cure, resting his chin on his hand as he deeply ponders the unbelievable accuracy of her strange prophecy. When he quietly asks how a 4-year-old child could possibly possess such critical knowledge, Bunny smirks with playful confidence, fully prepared for his question. Holding out her small hands to reveal a delicate pink pouch containing a mysterious egg, she beams radiantly with open arms as she cheerfully announces that the magical egg itself was the one that shared the secret with her. With an earnest beam, little Bunny proudly stretches out her small hands to present a tiny egg wrapped gently in pink cloth. She insists with complete devotion that it isn't just an ordinary egg, but a sleeping baby black flame dragon waiting to hatch. Kyriel rests his chin on his hand, observing her animated enthusiasm with quiet skepticism. Looking down at the tiny package in her hands, he calmly points out that a mighty, legendary dragon could hardly fit inside an egg of that size. Stunned by his logic, Bunny's expression collapses into sheer shock before her lower lip begins to tremble uncontrollably. Cradling the egg close to her chest, she sniffles back tears over the fate of her promised dragon. Seeing her genuine heartbreak, Kyriel's calm composure completely falters. Unable to bear her tearful sorrow, the habituellement stoic young lord quickly backtracks on his words, softly murmuring that perhaps there is a tiny 1 in a million chance it could actually hatch after all. Her tearful distress vanishes in an instant, replaced by a radiant smile that lights up the room and completely disarms him. For a young lord who prides himself on absolute, blunt honesty, telling a gentle lie just to see her happy is an unexpected surrender. Steeling himself, Kyriel redirects the conversation, asking why she previously warned him about a mysterious outbreak of illness breaking out. Bunny clears her throat with cute solemnity, getting ready to present her grand explanation. Standing tall inside the grand chamber, Bunny proudly boasts of her cleverness and declares her goal of becoming a mighty archmage. Kyriel listens in silence, though he privately notes that divine power and mana are opposing forces, making her dream virtually impossible. Completely unbothered by logic, Bunny flashes a beaming thumbs up, assuring him with total confidence that taking her in is a guaranteed victory for his household. To seal her offer, she presses a heavy little coin pouch straight into his palm. She promises to manage everything herself so she will never be a burden, even offering to grant him pocket money from her own savings. Calling him her handsome uncle leaves the stern young noble utterly speechless, caught off guard by her affectionate yet hilariously serious pitch. Turning to address the room, Bunny dramatically announces a limited-time flash sale, declaring that she is officially searching for a guardian to raise her. Her sudden public proclamation sends shockwaves through the hall, leaving attending nobles gasping in disbelief, while onlookers stand frozen in pure astonishment. Kyriel rests a hand against his collar, quietly trying to digest her unbelievably audacious scene. A subtle smirk touches Kyriel's face as he leans in close, asking with amused curiosity why she specifically needs a guardian to grow up. Bunny looks back at him with bright, unwavering eyes, explaining her desire to become a proper adult. Though there are plenty of other distinguished guests filling the hall, she makes it crystal clear that she has chosen him above everyone else. She gazes directly into his distinct features, calling out his black hair and deep red eyes. Kyriel silently recalls how others used to whisper behind his back, calling his demon curse creepy and unnatural. Yet Bunny completely shatters those painful memories, beaming as she declares his unique appearance to be super cool, beautiful, and wonderful. Bunny eagerly leans in close, her eyes sparkling with pure delight as she prepares to share a crucial secret. She whispers with absolute earnestness that handsome people are always the most important figures in any grand story. Looking at him with utter devotion, she insists his striking appearance proves he is destined for greatness. Kyriel gazes down at her, in quiet astonishment, caught completely off guard by her sincere praise regarding his distinct red eyes. When he asks if she truly finds them appealing, Bunny enthusiastically confirms her admiration with a beaming smile, completely shattering his painful memories of being shunned for his appearance. Kyriel maintains a quiet, intensely focused gaze as he takes in her unwavering confidence and bright affection. Meanwhile, the surrounding nobles throughout the grand hall whisper among themselves in sheer shock, utterly stunned by how fearlessly the little girl speaks to the formidable young lord without showing a single shred of formal aristocratic hesitation. Resting his chin against his hand, Kyriel coolly asks if he should step up to become her guardian, noting that he has no children of his own and plenty of spare time. However, behind his calm proposal lies a sharp vigilance, resolved to keep her nearby so he can closely monitor the faint demonic energy surrounding her. Her eyes widen in utter surprise before Bunny eagerly asks if he is officially taking on the role of her guardian. As Kyriel offers a slow, dignified nod of confirmation, her lingering anxiety instantly dissolves into radiant joy, illuminating her face with a breathtaking, ecstatic smile that completely disarms the stoic young lord. Flashing an energetic thumbs up, Bunny solemnly promises to serve him like a legendary leader and make sure he becomes immensely wealthy once she grows into a mighty ruler. Kyriel sits frozen in total bewilderment, his mind spinning as he tries to make sense of the hilariously grand ambition coming from such a small child. Standing nearby among the murmuring nobles, a quiet, silver-haired boy watches the bizarre exchange with intense annoyance and total disbelief. Turning around to scan the room, Bunny's bright gaze suddenly lands on the isolated young noble, noticing how he stands completely alone amidst the grand crowd without a single parent or companion by his side. Observing his sharp golden eyes, Bunny realizes that the lonely young boy has no parents to care for him either. Knowing how vital a proper guardian is for growing into a great adult, a sudden wave of fierce determination washes across her expressive face as she decides she cannot simply leave him standing alone in the dark. Without a single moment's hesitation, Bunny bounds forward and firmly takes hold of his hand, catching the silver-haired boy completely off guard. Ignoring his startled expression and flustered panic, she holds on tight with a triumphant grin, taking complete charge of the situation before the stunned young noble even has a chance to pull away. With boundless excitement, Bunny runs back across the polished floor, energetically dragging the bewildered young boy right along behind her. Kyriel sits quietly as she returns with her reluctant new companion in tow, calmly observing the unexpected scene while waiting to hear what hilariously ambitious pitch the little girl is about to present next. Bunny scrunches her face in serious thought, insisting that calling him uncle sounds far too distant for someone who is supposed to be her guardian. As Kyriel gently introduces his true name, Kyriel Eudia, Bunny instantly recalls the grand announcement of his arrival in the temple, her eyes sparkling with newfound awe as the connection finally clicks. Bunny proudly presents the young silver-haired boy, eagerly asking Kyriel to take them both in so Alan can grow up properly too. Looking up with pure earnestness, her sudden plea leaves the young lord gazing back in thoughtful silence. Bunny brightens up and calls out to her new companion, enthusiastically pulling him by the hand across the polished hall floor. Taken completely by surprise, the young boy sputters in panic as he is dragged along, unable to resist her energetic stride. Together they rush forward under the warm light of the ballroom chandeliers, drawing eyes from across the room. They stop right in front of Lord Kyriel Udia, whose gaze remains remarkably calm and unreadable. Bunny boldly asks if Alan can raise the snake together with her so he can grow up too, looking up at the Lord with wide, hopeful eyes. Kyriel simply stares back in quiet silence, offering no immediate objection to her unexpected request. The young boy blushes furiously, begging Bunny to let go of him and stop saying such strange things in front of the Lord. But Bunny quickly shushes him, gently placing her hand directly over his mouth to quiet his complaints. As they stand side by side before the stern noble, the boy mutters nervously under his breath, desperately trying to steady his panicked thoughts. Kyriel glances down at the small girl sitting so close to him, his sharp crimson eyes softening just a fraction beneath his calm exterior. Without any grand gesture or fuss, he quietly gives his approval, telling her she may do exactly as she wishes. A wave of sheer disbelief instantly ripples through the gathered nobles across the grand hall. Whispers erupt in every corner as onlookers gasp in astonishment, utterly stunned that someone as notoriously cold and distant as Lord Kyriel would yield to a small child's whim without a moment of hesitation. Adjusting his heavy dark cloak over his shoulders, Kyriel prepares to take his leave, completely ignoring the mounting commotion around him. The onlookers can hardly process the reality unfolding before them, utterly bewildered that a man known for being entirely indifferent to the world has so casually accepted this child. Her face lighting up with genuine delight, Bunny offers a sweet thank you before bowing politely to say goodbye. Hand in hand with her companion, she scampers happily down the grand corridor, her dark bunny backpack bouncing with every step as they retreat into the brightly lit palace halls together. Left behind in the quiet wake of her exit, Kyriel stands motionless for a fleeting second, a faint breath escaping his lips as he gazes at the empty space where the children had just been standing. Later that evening, along the quiet outdoor colonnade, an elderly mentor hurries alongside Kyriel, unable to hold back his growing frustration. He scolds the young lord sharply, demanding to know what he could possibly be thinking by making such a monumental decision publicly, while collateral relatives watch their every move like hawks. Kyriel merely yawns with casual indifference, pointing out that his father has been constantly asking to see his grandchildren anyway. He nonchalantly adds that having one son and one daughter sounds just about right, leaving the elder clutching his neck in pure exasperation at such reckless logic. The elder shouts in disbelief, questioning how Kyriel could bring children of completely unknown origin directly into the ducal line just to satisfy a passing thought. Kyriel looks away with a cool, unbothered expression, refusing to let the elder's furious outburst shake his resolve or alter his mood. The elder continues his heated lecture, reminding Kyriel that he was told to raise a pet, not take in human children. He passionately argues that someone who frequently forgets his own meals to the point of starving has no business taking responsibility for raising others. Faced with the relentless scolding, Kyriel maintains his silent profile, staring quietly into the cool night air. Having finished his unexpected exchange, Lord Kyriel casually turns on his heel and prepares to depart the grand hall, completely unbothered by the lingering tension around him. His elderly mentor rushes after him along the quiet hallway, desperately pleading with him to reconsider. He argues that taking in orphans as official ducal children will cause outrage, begging Kyriel to act only as their temporary legal guardian. A quiet, stubborn smirk plays across Kyriel's lips as he listens to the heated lecture. Rather than feeling persuaded, the relentless opposition only makes him want to carry out the adoption even more. As his mentor shouts in sheer exasperation, demanding an immediate answer, Kyriel simply raises a hand to cover a slow, lazy yawn, privately grumbling about how tiresome the entire matter has become. Meanwhile, Bunny bows politely to express her gratitude, cheerfully promising to visit again soon. She bows so low that her oversized rabbit backpack nearly tips over her head before she scampers away. Gazing after the little girl, Kyriel quietly acknowledges to himself that while he may not possess the qualities of a good parent, he is more than willing to lend them his powerful noble name as a guardian. Continuing down the grand blue corridor alone, he ponders what being a guardian actually entails. Deciding that deep reflection can wait, he resolves to sleep first and worry about his new responsibilities later. The next day, Bunny attends a formal tutoring session in the mansion. Her stern red-haired instructor briskly finishes a lecture, instructing her student to turn to page 88 without missing a beat. Opening her heavy green textbook, Bunny stares down at the page in total silence. To her dismay, the intricate cursive script looks like meaningless squiggles, making her eyes spin in utter dizziness. Defeated by her lesson, Bunny slumps onto her bed and buries her face deeply into a soft pillow, letting out a weary sigh as she despairs over her complete inability to read. Peeking over the cushion with wide, anxious eyes, she reflects on her lonely situation. Coming from an orphanage, she has no family or companions to turn to for quiet help. She pouts in frustration as she imagines other children being taught by their mothers or private tutors, leaving her feeling as though she is the only child left behind who cannot read. Suddenly, memories of her kind mentor, Luriel, flash across her mind. She recalls Luriel gently explaining that books are rich treasure troves of knowledge and encouraging her to learn through reading. Instantly revived by the memory, Bunny sits bolt upright on her bed. Clenching her small fists with fierce resolve, she declares that she will teach herself every single letter through books. Determined to purchase books of her own, Bunny grabs her small piggy bank and vigorously shakes it upside down over the table, hoping to count up her saved funds. To her bitter disappointment, only 4 tiny copper coins rattle out onto the wooden surface. Bunny clutches the empty jar against her chest, staring down at her meager savings in silence. She suddenly remembers why her savings are so low. She had spent almost everything she had on introduction fees just to secure her entry into the ducal estate. Hugging her plush toy closely, Bunny lets out a heavy sigh. Realizing she has no cash left for books, she accepts that she will have to resort to a special alternative. Her crimson eyes spark with sudden brilliance. Remembering Luriel's wise advice that those without money must simply earn it, she decides to employ the secret technique her mentor shared with her. Luriel had once assured her that by carefully observing others, she could quickly master practical skills, giving her a reliable way to make a living wherever she went. With a delightfully wicked smirk, Bunny prepares to revive her ultimate plan, the very same cunning scheme that had previously allowed her to outsmart and dismantle an entire orphanage. She straps her beloved rabbit backpack firmly onto her shoulders, feeling ready to execute her covert operation within the vast mansion walls. Snickering mischievous laughter under her breath, the little girl tiptoes into the dimly lit corridor, embarking on her secret mission with unwavering confidence. Determined to bring the entire ducal house under her spell, Bunny vows to execute her clever trap. Gazing at her notebook sketches of the Lord and his pet, she silently asks Luriel to watch over her as she embarks on her ambitious plot. Determined to secure her future in her new home, 4-year-old Bunny struts down the quiet hallway of the ducal mansion with a mischievous spring in her step. She quietly plots to make the entire ducal house fall right into her clever trap. Arwen stares at her with complete bewilderment as she stands before him. When he asks what is going on, Bunny offers a radiant, adorable smile and simply tells him to follow her, without asking any questions. Taking his hand, she pulls him straight out into the sunlit streets. Together, the 2 children sprint side by side through the open town, their footsteps echoing across the warm cobblestone plaza under the bright sky. Arwen desperately demands to know where on earth they are going at this hour. But Bunny suddenly turns back with a sharp, serious gaze, reminding Arwen that they need to make a good impression on the young master, leaving him shouting in frustration. As Arwen protests, Bunny earnestly explains her childlike wisdom. Adults dislike annoying kids and prefer ones who are cute, admirable, and special. Since she is not special yet, she insists she must give him an allowance, believing grown-ups love wealthy children. Arwen tries to reason with her, pointing out that she does not need a guardian just to grow up or seek an adult's favor. But Bunny looks him dead in the eye and plainly says no, catching Arwen completely off guard. Walking side by side down the quiet path, Bunny speaks with quiet honesty, admitting that children get lonely when they are all alone. Her unexpected vulnerability strikes a chord, leaving Arwen completely silent and wide-eyed as he looks at her. They soon arrive at the lively town market under the golden sunset. Bunny strikes a proud pose and happily announces that she is a genius, having memorized the exact path from when they previously went out to buy ingredients. Arwen wonders in confusion why she dragged him all the way to the market. But his eyes widen in total shock when Bunny pulls out a large bundle, spreads a cloth mat onto the cobblestones, and begins setting up her very own market stall. Teasing Arwen with a sly, mischievous grin, 4-year-old Bunny playfully tells him that he is still acting just like a helpless baby. As she calmly spreads her woven cloth mat across the sunlit cobblestones, she earnestly explains her childlike wisdom, that the very first step toward becoming an independent, respected grown-up is taking initiative and earning your own keep in the world. With bright, ambitious eyes, Bunny proudly declares that real financial independence is what adults admire most in a child. She fondly recalls the secret deep recipe she persuaded Chef Luri to prepare for her, along with the dramatically persuasive sales pitches she carefully observed in the market, eagerly preparing to put every single clever business tactic into action. Placing her wooden bowl of freshly cooked snacks onto the mat, Bunny cheerily reassures Arwen that the young master will absolutely adore her hard work. While Arwen stands completely frozen, in total disbelief at her antics, she enthusiastically thumps her rolled-up paper scroll against the ground, shouting out loudly to capture the curious gaze of everyday townspeople passing by. As an intrigued crowd gathers around her miniature street stall, Bunny confidently projects her voice across the plaza, grandly advertising her delicious, once-in-a-lifetime treats for a bargain price of just 5 coins. She beams with undeniable pride over her open business, while Arwen stands beside her, completely flabbergasted and entirely speechless at her bold performance. Meanwhile, far away in the grand, quiet study of the ducal mansion, the solemn atmosphere darkens as the Duke receives an urgent update from his chief butler. An enigmatic, mysterious illness has suddenly swept through the distant Rubia territory, leaving local doctors and top medical researchers completely baffled, unable to uncover its true cause or find any effective treatment. Demanding absolute internal secrecy regarding the outbreak, the Duke sternly instructs his butler to dispatch a private team along with a specialized tree sap to quiet the crisis. Stroking his chin in solemn reflection, he contemplates the terrifying accuracy of Bunny's notebook entries, quietly wondering if the mysterious child truly possesses the divine power of foresight. Later, in the quiet comfort of her bedroom, Bunny gleefully counts the shiny pile of coins she earned entirely on her own. Overflowing with satisfaction over her impressive fortune, she even uses her money to buy a beginner's letter book, thoroughly determined to master reading and writing, so she can navigate the complex human language with complete ease. Yet her playful focus soon shifts to the mysterious white egg resting safely atop her soft bed linens. Recalling her recent conversation with the maid Jessie, who explained that an egg requires constant, gentle warmth and proper incubation to hatch, Bunny gazes down at the delicate shell, thoughtfully pondering what she must do next to care for it. After carefully wrapping her white egg beneath warm blankets on the bed, Bunny sighs as she reflects on her relentless routine over the past 5 days. Balancing morning lessons, afternoon cooking, and late-day market sales, she stretches her tired arms and groans that working life is far too exhausting. When Arwen suddenly appears at her bedroom doorway, demanding to know what she is up to, Bunny looks back with wide red eyes. Seeing him standing there with folded arms, she meets his stern gaze without a single trace of guilt. Bunny simply gives a haughty shake of her head and text-cakes at him. She casually dismisses his lingering confusion, treating him as though he lacks basic understanding. Leaping down from her bed, Bunny proudly presents a heavy leather pouch overflowing with shiny silver coins. She cheerily announces that today is allowance day for the young master, earnestly explaining that since they earned the money together, half of it belongs to Arwen. While Arwen stands flabbergasted by her bizarre generosity, Bunny steps right up beside him and takes his hand. Looking directly into his eyes with a radiant, blooming smile, she bathes the room in innocent warmth. Utterly overwhelmed, Arwen turns his blushing face away in embarrassment. Reaching out on impulse, he gently pokes her cheek, only to instantly recoil in shock at his own unthinking touch as his heart races. Noticing his flustered reaction, Bunny flashes a sly smirk and gleefully asks if he finds her cute. Caught completely off guard, Arwen flushes bright red and angrily shouts back in denial, loudly stammering that she is ugly instead. The instant Bunny slumps her shoulders into a dramatic pout, Arwen panics. Watching a dark cloud linger over her head, he breaks into a cold sweat and bites his lip, desperately agonizing over how to fix his harsh words. Unable to bear her sadness, Arwen firmly grabs Bunny's hand and hurriedly blurts out that he will make a special exception to escort her to the young master himself. Her adorable gamble paying off, Bunny breaks into a sunshiny grin and happily accepts. Outside the grand cathedral, Bunny walked hand in hand with her companion. As they approached the steps, the boy froze and swallowed nervously. Bunny stood quietly beside him as he braced against the heavy atmosphere. Cruel whispers quickly rippled through the surrounding nobles. Venomous insults called him a disgrace and wished he would vanish from the duchy. The harsh rumors were swirled around them, leaving a visible sting of pain upon his face. Sensing his distress, Bunny squeezed his hand tightly. When he looked down in surprise, she met his gaze with a steady, radiant smile, softly assuring him that everything would be all right. Confused by her sudden optimism, the boy blinked down at her. Bunny proudly declared she would grow into a powerful archmage who feared nothing, leaving him struggling to hold back a burst of laughter. His sudden burst of laughter echoed across the courtyard, startling nearby onlookers. He teased her adorable mispronunciations until tears welled in his eyes, while Bunny crossed her arms in a cute pout. Pouting, Bunny turned and marched ahead briskly. He hurried to keep pace, asking if she felt scared entering such a massive place, but she firmly shook her head while taking his hand again. Giving a confident thumbs up, Bunny declared how strong she was. She proudly remembered enduring scary moments without fear, taking pride in her secret ability to channel water magic on her own. They arrived before massive doors guarded by stern sentries. Bunny offered a cheerful greeting and beamed up at them, happily announcing that she was here to see the young master. However, the tall guard responded only with a cold, unyielding glare. His hardened expression cast a chilly silence over her innocent and cheerful greeting. The guard's cold stare leaves the silver-haired boy flinching in discomfort. Yet Bunny remains entirely unfazed, holding his hand with gentle reassurance as they face the intimidating sentry together. When Bunny steps forward and cheerfully asks if the young master is inside, the guard's stern demeanor shatters in an instant. Surprised by her innocent presence, his harsh expression softens into flustered politeness. The guard hesitates, uncertain if young Master Kyriel can receive guests. However, another guard quickly steps in, confirming that the young master has resided in the mansion continuously since the summoning ritual. With the path cleared, the guard offers to escort them directly to Kyriel's quarters. Bunny responds with a bright smile and eagerly follows along, while her companion maintains a guarded, cautious stride. Watching Bunny trot ahead without a single worry, the boy feels a heavy ache in his chest. He reflects on how peaceful she seems, knowing all too well how ignorant she is of the harsh realities surrounding them. He knows that she is far from welcome in this high society stronghold. Painful memories flood his mind of noble children whispering viciously behind their backs, dismissing her as an illegitimate orphan who has no place among them. The snobbish taunts echo loudly in his memory, accusing both of them of greedily stealing privileges meant for true nobles. His eyes darken with quiet anger as he recalls how bitterly they were looked down upon. He feels a deep resentment toward their absent guardian, who took responsibility for them yet offered no protection against such malice. Glancing sideways at Bunny's cheerful face, he realizes that he must be the one to protect her. Bunny remains delightfully oblivious to his heavy thoughts, dashing toward every new sight with wide, fascinated eyes. Seeing her pure enthusiasm amidst such cold surroundings only solidifies his determination to safeguard her innocent smile. As Bunny marvels at the grandeur of the cathedral corridor, the guard pauses to answer her curious questions. He points upward toward a grand glass dome housing a magnificent stone statue of a divine phoenix. The guard explains that this legendary creature was summoned by the first Duke of Eudia and remains thus proud emblem of the ducal crest. Bunny gasps in delight, her eyes sparkling with pure enchantment at the magnificent sight. Her astonishment quickly gives way to playful arrogance as she recalls her own secret beast, Blackie. Proudly convinced her shadowy dragon easily outshines any stone phoenix, she walks up to the grand entrance of Kyriel's quarters as the guard announces their arrival. Stepping onto the ornate carpets of the upper corridor, Bunny marvels at the grand ceiling and rich decorations, feeling utterly tiny in such a massive space. Her silver-haired companion stays close beside her as the guard steps up to the imposing doors. With a firm knock, the guard announces in a clear voice that Lady Bunny is here to see young Master Kyriel. Before anyone inside can answer, a sudden, violent noise shatters the quiet. The sharp crash makes the guard flinch in surprise, while Bunny and the boy exchange bewildered glances. A heavy, uncomfortable silence falls over the hallway once more, prompting the guard to call out through the closed doors with cautious hesitation. Kyriel's weary, frustrated voice finally responds from within, instructing the guard to make them wait a moment before dismissing him. The guard nods dutifully and turns back to the children, politely asking Bunny to wait outside. With her usual cheerful optimism, Bunny readily agrees, and the guard takes his leave with a bow. As the guard turns to depart, his respectful demeanor instantly vanishes. He casts an icy, disdainful glance toward the silver-haired boy, looking down on him with unspoken contempt before walking past. Left alone in the quiet hallway outside the grand doors, the boy feels the cold sting of prejudice. Though he is long used to being treated like an unwanted nuisance, his gaze darkens with fierce determination. He vows to protect Bunny from the young master, resolved to keep her safe from any harm or hostility. As the children step through the grand hall, a stern knight eyes them with cold disdain. Alan steels his nerves, bracing himself against the harsh treatment he is used to enduring, determined to shield little Bunny from the guard's icy glare. When the heavy doors creak open, the Duke appears in the doorway, caught off guard to find both children standing outside. He narrows his eyes slightly, noting that he had only requested a single visitor. Without a moment of hesitation, Bunny cheerfully blurts out how the knight gave them the cold shoulder all the way here. Alan's face turns bright red in shock, completely caught off guard that she noticed the guard's hostility. Intrigued, the Duke kneels down and softly asks how the guard ignored her. Bunny candidly explains that the knight only greeted her while glaring coldly at Alan, prompting the boy to hurriedly slap a hand over her mouth in absolute panic. In that moment, Bunny remembers a quiet lesson about the purpose of adults. Children are meant to rely on those older than them, letting grown-ups handle heavy conflicts that little hands cannot solve alone. Knowing she cannot fight a powerful knight herself, Bunny looks up at the Duke with total trust. Since he is the adult standing by her side, she firmly declares that Daddy will just have to scold the guard for them. The casual slip of the word Daddy sends shockwaves through Alan, leaving him utterly speech-bound. Meanwhile, the Duke looks down at her with a calm, silent gaze as a gentle atmosphere fills the room. Placing his hand over his chest, the Duke quietly accepts her words, reaffirming his promise to act as her true guardian whenever she needs him. When the Duke kneels before them and softly asks if Alan only brought Bunny here to use his noble name, the young boy freezes in utter shock. Flustered under the Duke's calm gaze, Alan hastily stammers that it was all just a joke, nervously claiming that powerful adults only enjoy playing cruel tricks on helpless children. Yet the Duke remains entirely unbothered, quietly questioning why he would ever waste his time playing such games with them. Biting his lip in frustration, Alan angrily fires back, accusing the Duke of taking pleasure in watching vulnerable orphans build up hope just to shatter it. But the Duke simply responds with a sly gentle smile, teasingly asking if Alan himself got excited, at the thought of having him as a father. Stripped of all his composure, Alan's face flushes red in embarrassment, leaving him completely speech-bound while Bunny stares up at him in surprise. Noticing Alan's intense reaction, Bunny's eyes sparkle with pure curiosity as she directly asks if he secretly wants the Duke to be her dad too. The Duke turns back to Alan with a quiet smile, reminding him that he was the very one who originally requested a guardian to raise them. Panicking all over again, Alan insists he only asked for a guardian out of necessity, while Bunny looks at him with innocent wonder. As the Duke silently observes their exchange with a gentle, attentive look, Bunny nervously fidgets her small hands and gazes up with bright, earnest eyes. Alan stands quietly by her side, his defensive guard softening just a bit under the Duke's calm and reassuring presence, even as he struggles to process the warmth surrounding them. Deep down, Alan's fear of relying on adults reflects the painful lessons Bunny herself was taught in the past. A quiet flashback unfolds beneath the moonlit night sky, recalling the dark-cloaked figure of Luri walking hand-in-hand with little Bunny through the quiet town streets. Luri solemnly warned the young child never to place her trust in humans, reminding her that adults will only remain by her side until she grows up. Back then, little Bunny held fast to Luri's cloak, looking up with sweet affection and whispering that she hated humans and only ever wanted to be with Luri. Entrusting Bunny with her magical notebook to guide her through life's trials, Luri listened as the sweet little girl begged to stay by her side forever rather than being left in the care of strangers. Overcome by Bunny's adorable devotion, Luri clutched her heart in dramatic delight before wrapping the little girl in a tight, protective embrace. She fretted anxiously over sending such an innocent child into a cold world filled with untrustworthy people, desperately hoping no one would dare to bully or mistreat her. Reassuring the young girl of her deep affection, Luri knelt down to look into Bunny's eyes, gently explaining that because she is a special child, she must temporarily endure living among humans. She strictly instructed Bunny never to long for love from outsiders, nor to allow envy or jealousy to take root in her heart. Instead of opening her heart to untrustworthy grown-ups, Luri gave Bunny one final, mischievous rule to live by. View foolish adults merely as stepping stones, enthusiastically teaching the young child to exploit their generosity and take full advantage of every resource available to her. Despite all of Luri's solemn warnings, never to place her trust in grown-ups, Bunny cannot suppress her true desire to have a loving father of her own. Choosing to set aside her guardian's strict lesson just this once, the sweet little girl smiles brightly, happily deciding to follow her heart and welcome the Duke into her life. When the Duke asks if she disdains her father, Bunny beams with pure delight, unabashedly declaring how much she likes him while deciding to act entirely as she pleases. She presses another worn pouch filled with coins directly into his open palm. Watching the small gesture, the Duke quietly wonders if this is meant as an innocent gift for a parent. Before he can process it, Bunny innocently instructs him to dump all his money in. Her colorful phrasing leaves the Duke stunned and utterly bewildered by her unexpected choice of words. She proudly claims it is simply grown-up talk to smash everything together. The Duke can only look on, suspecting someone must have exposed the little girl to rather colorful vocabulary. Rising to his feet, the Duke inquires about impending news regarding medicine from the Merchant Guild. He glances down, silently baffled by how a tiny child knows secrets even he does not. Wondering if she was sent by someone, he asks what brought her to him today. Bunny cheerfully announces she came to hand over pocket money, earning a subtle, understanding nod. Brightly announcing her fondness for presents, Bunny scampers closer and stands proudly by his side, calling him Daddy with a warmth that thoroughly disarms his guarded composure. Pausing in brief hesitation, the Duke extends his hand and tenderly strokes her soft hair. Bunny responds with an affectionate little giggle, savoring the gentle touch. Refusing to leave Aaron behind, Bunny eagerly nudges him forward into the moment. Though hesitant, Aaron receives a gentle pat on the head, stiffening in quiet surprise. Satisfied with her good daddy, Bunny gives a sweet parting bow and bids farewell. As the children take their leave, the Duke remains standing alone in contemplative silence. After the children depart, the Duke runs a troubled hand through his dark hair, haunted by an eerie feeling. He detects a faint trace of demonic energy surrounding Bunny, suspecting she might harbor hidden motives. Yet despite his deep suspicions, he admits to himself that she is far too adorable to punish, choosing for now to let her be. Meanwhile, the duchy holds its annual interview sessions for children who underwent the summoning ritual, a rare occasion where the patriarch offers personal guidance. Waiting nervously behind the screens, Bunny eavesdrops on terrifying rumors that the strict patriarch scolds anyone who hesitates, despises lies, and might even sell off those who fail his sudden tests. The boy beside her warns that manners are strictly tested, recounting how someone was severely punished just for eating an unoffered snack. Gulping in fear, Bunny clutches her teddy bear tight, convinced the patriarch must be a terrifyingly greedy monster. As another child is called forward for his turn, Bunny sits rigid like a soldier. She reassures herself that the secret advice from her dragon egg will prove her worth and make the patriarch see just how useful she truly is. Determined to protect her weak dragon egg until it hatches into a fierce black flame dragon, Bunny puffs her chest proudly. She counts her impressive achievements, confident she will score full marks on her interview, while Aaron watches her silly grin with utter bewilderment. When her name is finally called, Bunny is escorted into the grand library. The stern, white-haired patriarch looks up from his paperwork and bids her enter, prompting Bunny to bow dramatically as she steps inside. Standing tall in her bunny cape, 4-year-old Bunny greets her grandpa patriarch with bright, unshakable confidence. High within the grand, quiet library, an announcement breaks the silence, declaring that Lady Bunny has arrived. The Duke gives his swift approval, allowing the 4-year-old girl to step inside. She enters with a polite bow and presents herself warmly, standing proud in her outfit, complete with bunny ears. Acknowledging her introduction with a simple nod, the Duke watches in silence as Bunny makes her way across the polished floor. She heads straight for the massive high-backed chair across the table, carefully scrambling up until she settles into the seat as neatly as possible. Her wide, radiant eyes peer curiously over the high wooden table. Looking at her from across the room, the Duke is struck by how surprisingly adorable she is up close. Caught off guard by his own internal reaction, he hurriedly clears his throat to regain his stern demeanor before addressing her. The Duke shifts this topic to her magic, remarking that he heard she managed to summon an egg this time. Meanwhile, a servant sets down a luxurious plate filled with beautifully decorated heart-shaped cookies and sweet pastries, glistening temptingly right in front of her. Bunny looks at the delicious spread, recalling how someone previously got into severe trouble for eating snacks without permission. Suspecting this unexpected treat is actually a trap designed to test her, she stubbornly holds back, while the Duke looks on, puzzled as to why she refuses to eat. Steering past the unpicked snacks, the Duke asks if she will show him her summoning. Bunny answers with enthusiasm, reaching behind to her bunny-shaped backpack. She rummages inside the zipper pocket and retrieves a small cloth-wrapped object, holding it tightly in her palm. Presenting the bundle with absolute drama, Bunny announces that inside lies a black flame dragon egg destined to hatch into a powerful creature. The Duke stares back, utterly bewildered by her dramatic claim and struggling to process her words. Remembering Luriel's faith in her, Bunny imagines how deeply impressed her father will be once the dragon hatches. The thought of earning his praise and receiving affectionate head pats brings a sly, mischievous smile to her face as she imagines turning his pride to her advantage. Seeing how earnest and serious she is about her treasure, the Duke rests a finger against his chin, leaning forward to inspect the wrapped item closely. Bunny carefully places her small wrapped egg onto the grand wooden table. Leaning forward with quiet curiosity, the Duke inspects the strange object up close and reaches out a finger adorned with a precious gemstone ring. The moment his ring makes contact with the shell, a bright flash erupts between them. To Bunny's shock and the Duke's utter surprise, the precious stone in his ring suddenly cracks and shatters to pieces. Rather than suffering damage, the egg greedily absorbs the divine magic overflowing from the broken jewel. Bunny stares, wide-eyed in absolute panic, realizing her tiny egg has just destroyed something incredibly valuable. Her mind instantly flashes back to her younger days at the market, gazing longingly at trays of round chocolates. Even with her mouth watering, she had reminded herself of Luriel's warning to limit her sweets to one per day. Luriel had promised her a special treat for her birthday, if she stayed patient, but young Bunny had still begged for just one taste. That past memory makes her realize how even smallest temptation can lead to huge trouble. Back in the present, the Duke falls completely silent, glaring sternly at the table. Bunny trembles with fear, convinced that Grandpa Duke is furious at her egg for causing such a mess. In truth, the Duke is simply stunned as he stares down at the mysterious egg. Having witnessed it absorb the Power Stone and grow in size, he wonders if the strange creature possesses a mind of its own. Overwhelmed by fear, Bunny leaps out of her seat and scurries across the room. She stops directly before the towering Duke, determined to face his anger and take full responsibility. Reaching into her pocket, she pulls out a small cloth pouch and bows as deeply as she can. She frantically apologizes on behalf of her egg, explaining that it was only hungry and never meant to bite. Caught entirely off guard, the Duke blinks in bewilderment at her dramatic apology. Tearful and trembling, Bunny holds out her tiny pouch of money, nervously asking if her savings are enough to pay for his broken ring. The Duke stares down at her in complete disbelief, asking if she honestly intends to pay for a ring set with a divine power stone. Bunny gasps in shock at the mention of divine power, realizing the immense value of what her egg just absorbed. Panic surges through her as she fears her mistake is far too great. Clutching her small coin pouch tightly against her chest, Bunny trembles nervously before the formidable Duke. Tears well up in her wide, radiant eyes as she gazes up at him in utter helplessness, softly asks if her savings are still not enough to make amends. The high priest looks down at the child in disbelief, asking if she truly intends to purchase a ring set with a holy power stone. Realizing her small coin pouch isn't enough, Bunny clutches it tightly with tear-filled eyes, asking softly if her offering truly won't suffice. Unable to resist her tearful expression, the priest falls completely silent. Without another word, he takes off the sacred ring and gently places it into Bunny's small hands alongside her pouch, leaving her wide-eyed in quiet surprise. He assures her she still has coins left over, exchanging an enormously valuable holy ring for her modest allowance. As Bunny gazes at the glowing treasure in utter awe, the priest coughs self-consciously to hide his weakness for cuteness before steering the conversation back to her evaluation. Bunny answers enthusiastically as the priest opens her test results to reveal her official ranking. Though she waits nervously with trembling shoulders, he nods in quiet approval, announcing that she placed first among all young children in the academy. Placing his hand over her test papers, the priest turns to her with a serious expression. He asks what she truly wants to become when she grows up, waiting patiently for the little prodigy's answer. Without missing a beat, Bunny proudly declares her intention to become a great demon king. Catching her slip-up when the priest stares back in silent bewilderment, she quickly shouts a correction, claiming she meant to say a great mage instead. The priest inquires if she has any desire to become a high priest or saintess, explaining that those roles hold the highest rank and serve closest to God. Bunny smiles sweetly while holding on to her harmless lie, insisting that she simply loves magic. Though aware that those with holy power typically cannot wield magic, the priest refrains from discouraging her. He nods in agreement and takes up his quill, officially recording her dream of becoming a great mage. Turning to the glowing egg Bunny summoned, the high priest admits he has never seen anything like it before. Gazing thoughtfully at the mysterious sphere cradled in her small hands, he wonders aloud whether it is a holy relic or a divine beast waiting to hatch. With a proud, sparkling grin, Bunny confidently declares that a grand black flame dragon will hatch from within. The priest repeats her dramatic claim in silent disbelief, entirely overwhelmed by her relentless cuteness as she beams up at him with unbothered innocence. Sighing softly at her exaggerated imagination, the priest accepts her answer without further argument. He takes up his pen once more and carefully notes down her response on the official record. Hoping to break the tension, the priest kindly offers her some cookies and juice. Bunny firmly declines, declaring herself a mature adult who cannot be swayed by childish treats, even as she secretly swallows her pride while staring longingly at the delicious snacks. Bunny proudly insists that she is far too grown to be tempted by sweets. But despite her best efforts to act like a mature adult, her watering mouth tells a completely different story. When the Duke offers to wrap up the plate of treats, Bunny hesitates, remembering how harshly she was reprimanded before for eating without permission. She carefully considers her next move. Reaching out her hands eagerly, Bunny reasons that taking the treats to her room for later will completely bypass the rule, assuring him that she will save them for another time. The Duke instructs his butler to prepare a basket of sweets for her journey. Observing the rare exception to the estate's strict trial rules, the butler smiles quietly, realizing just how deeply his master has come to favor the young girl. As night settles over the quiet estate, Bunny lies tucked under the covers with her stuffed plush. But the moment the castle falls silent, her eyes snap open in the dark. Glancing around carefully, she slips out of bed and shapes her blanket over a pillow to disguise her absence. With her plush toy strapped to her back, she tiptoes quietly into the dimly lit hallway. After checking both directions to ensure no guards are watching, she dashes along the quiet corridor and makes her way out toward the moonlit estate grounds. Approaching a hidden magical barrier, Bunny presses her small palms against the glowing wall. As bright light erupts around her, she unleashes her bubble magic, sending golden streams of energy swirling through the night air. With a gentle touch of her bubble magic, Bunny carefully harvests the tree's sweet sap, gathering pure golden syrup into 3 small jars to make candied sweet potatoes. Remembering the strict rule to take sap only 3 times from a single tree, Bunny knows she must preserve their life. Realizing how few trees remain, she carefully ponders her next move, aware that she will soon need a new way to earn money. Suddenly, a smooth voice breaks the quiet night, startling her so deeply that she loses her footing. Before she can hit the ground, a pair of strong hands catches her just in time, revealing the young lord looking down at her with quiet concern. When he sternly asks why she is wandering the grounds at such a late hour, Bunny's mind races with panic. Desperate to keep her magic hidden, she hastily stammers that she simply couldn't sleep and came outside for a walk. The young lord gazes down at her silently, his intense red eyes searching her face for the truth. Sweating nervously under his sharp scrutiny, Bunny swallows hard, wondering if her secret identity has finally been exposed. Bunny holds her breath as red eyes lock onto her, terrified her secret has been exposed. But instead of an interrogation, he simply warns her not to wander around alone late at night, prompting a quick, relieved promise. Offering a gentle head pat, he smiles at her innocent answer while Bunny quietly celebrates escaping suspicion. He extends a hand to walk her back, offering to escort her safely to her room. Outside her room, he bids her a gentle goodnight before turning away. Stepping across the threshold into the quiet darkness, Bunny lets out a deep sigh, convinced the long, nerve-wracking ordeal is finally over. Just as she steps inside, his voice calls out her name from the doorway. He pauses with a calm stare before dropping a sudden, terrifying question, asking her outright if she can use magic. Panicking, Bunny vigorously shakes her head, stammering that she knows nothing about magic. After a lingering silence, he concedes that he must have misseen, urging her to hurry inside and rest. The door clicks shut behind her as she bids him goodnight, leaving him alone in the dim corridor. Resting a hand on his chin, he mutters to himself, thoroughly unconvinced by her innocent act. He vividly recalls seeing her interact with the glowing orb on the moonlit balcony. Knowing the sacred artifact used in the ritual cannot be activated without divine power, he realizes the truth. The little girl possesses divine strength. Standing alone on the mansion's steps under the cool blue twilight, he ponders the absolute truth of their world. Divine power and magic cannot coexist within the same body. In all recorded history, only a single ancient emperor possessed both extraordinary forces simultaneously. Inside her dark bedroom, little Bunny sleeps soundly under her blanket with her bunny plush, completely unaware of the harsh reality. If she is deemed a demon child, she faces death, and if she is a special ability user, she must be reported immediately. Reporting her would certainly relieve him of wasting any more energy worrying about her. Yet he remembers her earnest expression when she declared her desire to grow up. She had insisted that every child requires a proper guardian to reach adulthood, making him briefly wonder if he should step up as her protector, before questioning why he even entertained such a thought. Suddenly pausing in his footsteps, he realizes with a quiet surprise that he is already her appointed guardian. Looking up at the illuminated windows of the grand mansion under the starry night sky, a gentle, amused smirk softens his face as he chuckles quietly to himself. He reflects on how she has never once asked him for help, always remaining surprisingly self-reliant despite receiving occasional pouches of money. As he walks along the moonlit path, he mutters that she is far too well-behaved for a kid and could stand to be just a little more childish. Walking through the quiet estate, he couldn't help wishing the child would act a little more like a normal kid, feeling disappointed that she hasn't even called him father yet. Just a few days later, a sudden update completely shatters the peaceful routine of the mansion. Pausing mid-gesture on his velvet couch, the Duke listens in stunned disbelief as his maid delivers alarming news. The secret escort tailing the children reported that Lady Bunny and young Master Alan were suddenly detained by guards within the fief. Bunny's desperate search for money went back to a memory from her past. Years ago, an angry landlady screamed at her tenants, demanding money for their stay. Hiding behind a cabinet, young Bunny watched in silence as the woman threatened to kick out anyone who couldn't pay. Lurie clasped her hands together, begging for just a little mercy after heavy rains ruined her business. But the landlady remained completely heartless, shutting down her pleas without a second thought. Watching from the shadows, little Bunny glared in quiet anger as the landlady issued a final warning. If they failed to pay full rent next month, they would be thrown out into the street. The landlady added a chilling threat, warning that wearing a headscarf looked suspicious, while guards were actively rounding up anyone suspected of demon ties. Lurie quickly defended herself, explaining that her headscarf only hid a painful scar rather than a demon horn. As the landlady finally departed, Bunny softly called out her name in concern. Sighing heavily against the wooden door, Lurie tried to collect herself. She looked down in surprise as tiny hands tugged on her skirt, with Bunny looking up with worried eyes. Kneeling down to Bunny's level, Lurie gently explained that humans cared deeply about money and allowance. Holding the child's hands warmingly, she reassured her that greed was simply how human society functioned. Watching her beloved caretaker suffer under such harsh cruelty, young Bunny pouted with determination, reaching a very simple truth in her tiny heart that all humans were bad. Lurie comforted young Bunny by explaining that greed was simply human nature. She promised that once Bunny grew up to become the great demon king, they would finally live proudly with their heads held high. Lurie repeatedly urged the child to remember every story and lesson, warning that they might soon be separated. When Bunny innocently asked if Lurie's horns would return once she became Demon King, Lurie paused in surprise before quickly offering a gentle smile. She reassuringly explained that even if they were temporarily parted, a fully grown Bunny would be able to find where she had gone, leaving the child with the lasting belief that money was essential to avoid abandonment. Back in the present, the guard diligently lays out all the legal rules, merchant guild permits, and taxes required to sell food. Poor Bunny feels completely lost, unable to comprehend a single word. Shaking his head, the officer presses the quiet children for their family name and address, warning that without them, they could be held as prisoners and sold into slavery. That terrible warning instantly triggers Bunny's memory of Lurie's vivid description of a slave's miserable life. Endlessly spanked, chopping onions through tears, and forced to eat hated vegetables. Panic seizes her as she envisions the Duke being summoned to the station. In her dramatic imagination, the Duke angrily disowns her for being a troublesome burden rather than a genius, while the elder rejects her as a disgrace to their noble bloodline. Cast out and left sobbing on the floor, she envisions losing her home forever. Paralyzed by sheer terror, Bunny stares ahead with tear-filled eyes. She desperately concludes that revealing her identity as the Duke's daughter will ruin the family's honor, strip away her guardian, and leave her completely discarded on the streets. Fear grips Bunny as she worries that revealing her identity will disgrace the duchy and get her expelled, until the officer casually mentions that coming clean only results in a minor fine. Seizing the opportunity, Bunny tearfully hands over her pouch of money and confesses she has no parents to rely on, instantly overwhelming both Alan and the guard with her heartbroken tears. Furious that his companion is crying, Alan steps up to protect her and threatens to break them out. But Bunny tugs his sleeve and quietly urges him to stay calm so they can resolve the situation peacefully. Bunny offers the rest of her hard-earned money to pay the fine, prompting the flustered officer to hastily back down and promise not to report them to any adults. As the guard quietly reflects on the child's lonely plight, Bunny sneaks a sly glance and clenches her fist, quietly pleased that her calculated emotional play worked exactly as planned. The tense quiet is shattered when a striking dark-haired noble suddenly bursts into the room, calling out their names, checking to see if the two young children are unharmed. Bunny turns an accusing glare toward the officer, believing he secretly summoned help, while the guard desperately defends himself, insisting he has no idea who the high-ranking noble is. The noble steps forward once more to ask if they are okay, and as Alan respectfully greets him as the young lord, the stunned officer panics and stammers an apology to his distinguished visitor. The young lord calmly intervenes, stating his children have caused trouble and look shaken. He instructs the officer to handle the remaining details with his personal aide, Levon, who steps forward to take charge. The officer freezes in sheer panic upon realizing he has been interrogating high-ranking nobles of the prestigious Udia ducal house. Pale and trembling, he stares in disbelief at the quiet children sitting before him. With the officer completely silenced and the matter settled, the children are escorted outside to the waiting ducal carriage, which promptly departs down the cobblestone road. Inside the carriage, an uncomfortable silence fills the air. Sitting across from them, Lord Kyriel remains stern and silent, while Bunny and Alan nervously exchange glances, afraid to break the quiet. Fidgeting anxiously in her seat, Bunny lowers her head as tears well up in her eyes. She worries deeply that her grand dramatic act in the office has made the young lord see her as a troublesome child. Inside the quiet carriage, the Duke breaks the silence by asking if either child has been injured. Yet, despite his mild tone, Bunny sits trembling in terror, terrified that she might be seen as a burden. Clinging desperately to her dress, the little girl tearfully insists she isn't bothersome, haunted by servants' warnings that those without money eventually get cast out. Sobbing uncontrollably under his watchful gaze, Bunny begs not to be sent away, promising to work hard and earn whatever it takes to stay until she grows up. Gathering every ounce of courage, she reaches inside her clothes and pulls out a small pouch, reaching forward to hand it directly to the startled man. Placing her entire monthly savings onto his lap, Bunny pleads for leniency, promising to pay even more next time if he will just forgive her this once. The Duke stares down with a stern, impenetrable expression, causing Bunny to flinch in fear that her modest offering wasn't enough to appease him. Opening the cloth, she reveals a top-grade divine power stone alongside a few coins, explaining that she spent nearly everything she had to buy food for Eggy. The Duke carefully inspects the glowing white stone in disbelief, questioning how a child could be carrying such a rare artifact before quietly calling her name. Standing dejected between them, Bunny meekly nods, listening in silence as the adult begins to explain the true nature of the item she handed over. Noticing her distress, the young boy gently reaches over and takes Bunny's hand, holding it tight as his fierce golden eyes remain fixed on the Duke. Looking up hesitatingly into the serious atmosphere, Bunny breaks the silence to ask if the young master hates her now. Fearing the worst, Bunny meekly asks if she has become a burden, staring up in dread as the Duke thoughtfully considers his response before softly mentioning his daughter. Squinting her eyes shut in terror as she prepares to be cast out, Bunny flinches when a large hand gently rests on her head, unexpectedly calling her adorable. Stunned by his gentle touch, Bunny listens as the Duke reassures her that he will not scold her, though his tone grows serious when he asks why both children were out trying to make money. Fidgeting nervously, Bunny stammers that she was only trying to earn money, leaving the Duke to watch her intently before reaching down to ask why she felt the need to do so. She tearfully explains that good children must bring in money to stay in the house, pleading with him not to throw her away just because she lacked a proper permit. Silently reaching out, the Duke lifts the trembling girl up onto his lap, gently reassuring her that he has no intention of ever casting his own daughter away. As Bunny blinks in total disbelief, she remembers the severe warnings written inside her secret notebook, which described Duke Kiriel Yudia as a ruthless commander who hated demons. The notebook cautioned that this formidable man despised useless children above all else, warning her with absolute certainty that she must never let down her guard around him. The genius notebook warns that if Bunny's guardian ever turns out to be Kiriel Yudia, she must proceed with extreme caution. He is legendary as a humorless warrior who slaughtered demons and utterly despises useless children, leaving no room for a single mistake. While Bunny quietly worries about proving her worth to remain in the ducal household, the Duke holds her gently on his lap. Looking down at her thoughtfully, he softly murmurs that she does not need to force herself to be useful just to stay by his side. Holding her tenderly against his chest, the Duke firmly promises that having taken her in, he will take complete responsibility and never abandon her. Bunny's eyes sparkle with utter delight upon hearing his reassurance that he will guard her until she reaches adulthood. Shifting his gaze to Alan, the Duke assures the young boy that the exact same promise applies to him. Overwhelmed by the unexpected kindness, Alan turns completely bright red from embarrassment, prompting Bunny to laugh and point out his flushed face as their carriage travels through the city. Meanwhile, inside a sunlit room in the temple, an elder silver-haired priest sits with his arms folded, impatiently tapping his shoe against the carpet. The sudden sound of a soft knock at the door catches his attention, making him snap his head around in anticipation. When the grand double doors open, Bunny steps into the room and offers a sweet, respectful bow of greeting. The priest's stern, imposing expression instantly vanishes, melting into an uncharacteristically bright and overjoyed smile the moment he sees the adorable young girl. Bunny happily explains that she has arrived to purchase holy stones, trotting eagerly across the stone floor. Welcoming her with open arms, the priest guides her to a desk and lays out a dazzling selection of glowing, multi-colored gems for her to carefully inspect. As Bunny inspects the colorful, sparkling holy stones laid out on the table, the true significance of divine power stones comes into sharp focus. Almost entirely monopolized by House Yudia, these sacred ores are immensely valuable. They possess remarkable purifying power that wards off illnesses, cleanses foul energy, and can even be forged into lethal weapons against monsters and demons. Placing a stone onto the table, a visiting noble reports concerning news to the Duke. Swindlers have been secretly peddling fake divine stones throughout Yudia territory. Although the ducal house took immediate, decisive action to track down and eliminate the fraudsters, suppressing the illicit trade required unrelenting vigilance. Even after deploying scouting familiars like the Pegasus to track residual threats, the Duke turns his attention back to the little girl beside him. Though high-grade divine power stones cost a fortune in Imperial Rost, purchasing them is a necessary investment to nourish and hatch Bunny's mysterious divine beast. Absorbing sacred power has already caused the divine beast egg to swell as large as Bunny herself. Watching the egg devour divine power stones with such a ravenous appetite leaves no doubt that an extraordinary creature is preparing to hatch, leading Bunny to excitedly point out the red gem she wants. Receiving permission, Bunny retrieves her toy elephant piggy bank and carefully extracts her saved coins. She counts aloud all the way up to 25 before beaming and offering the coins to the Duke. Seeing her manage such advanced counting with utter pride, the Duke glows with affection, calling her a true genius. A knock at the door announces the butler, prompting the Duke to quickly adjust to his usual stern expression. However, as the butler steps inside, he notices the Duke tenderly stroking Bunny's head, silently observing that the patriarch no longer makes any effort to hide how much he adores the child. Approaching with a gentle smile, the butler warmly compliments Bunny, noting how charming her new yellow hair ribbon looks. Delighted by his kind words, Bunny happily deems him a good human in her mind, bouncing joyfully on the sofa while the adults turn back to serious matters. As Bunny quietly plays with her elephant plushie, the butler's expression grows solemn as he hesitatingly brings up dark news. He reveals that an unsettling rumor has begun circulating among the defeated demons who escaped into hiding after the war, that a child of the demons is still alive. Hearing these words, Bunny visibly flinches in shock and fear. The butler solemnly clarifies as the dark rumor, confirming that the slain demon king left behind a living child who is destined to awaken as the next ruler of the demons. Hearing her hidden identity discussed so casually by the legendary demon slayer, Bunny freezes in shock, accidentally letting her coins spill from her hands to clatter loudly across the carpeted floor. Noticing her sudden distress, the butler quickly kneels beside her to collect the scattered coins and tenderly asks if she is all right, squeezing out a tiny, polite thank you. As he hands her money back, Bunny tries desperately to act normal, but her wide, panic-stricken eyes reveal the paralyzing fear gripping her heart. Turning back to the ducal patriarch, the butler asks what course of action they should take regarding this ominous threat. Duke Kiriel's expression darkens into ruthless resolve as he coldly commands that they locate the child without delay, declaring with fierce conviction that every single demon must be utterly eradicated from their land. Bowing respectfully, the butler promises to assemble a specialized search team at once to carry out the Duke's severe decree. He then turns his attention back to Bunny, softening his voice to let her know that their heavy discussion has concluded so she does not remain frightened by their stern tone. Informing her that the Duke's aide is waiting outside to escort her, the butler offers a comforting gesture. Hugging her elephant plushie tightly to her chest, Bunny forces a shaky, desperate smile, completely horrified by the chilling realization that if her true origin as the demon child is ever discovered, she will face certain death. Bunny sits nervously on the ornate carpet, clutching her tiny plush animal tightly against her chest, as the butler softly announces that the Duke's aide is waiting right outside. Panic surges through her mind as she remembers the severe warning that a single mistake could cost her life. Squeezing her eyes shut, she stammers out a trembling reply, desperately struggling to keep her terror hidden. A handsome officer with vibrant red hair and a pristine white uniform steps forward, bowing deeply with flawless etiquette. He introduces himself as Levon, the dedicated personal aide serving young Lord Kiriel, extending his formal respects to the small girl sitting quietly before him on the rug. Doing her very best to act adorable and polite, Bunny announces with wide, sparkling eyes that she is 4 years old and introduced herself as the young lord's baby. Levon looks down at her with a calm, stoic expression, acknowledging her words with a cool brevity that leaves her feeling uncertain. Without any warning, Levon reaches inside his red coat and pulls out a small magic recording orb, politely requesting Bunny to remain standing right in her current pose. Bunny hesitates in utter confusion, while the butler in the background turns pale with absolute astonishment at the aide's sudden actions. Flashes of light repeatedly illuminate the room as Levon drops to his knees, taking rapid magic photographs of Bunny from every conceivable angle. Bunny stands frozen in complete bewilderment, while the aide zealously moves all around her, capturing her adorable expressions with intense, unyielding focus. As abruptly as the photo session began, Levon stands back up and smooths his uniform with calm dignity, leaving Bunny and the butler blinking in total disarray. Extending a welcoming hand toward her, Levon gently explains that young Lord Kiriel has requested her presence, asking if she would kindly accompany him. Meanwhile, in the quiet sanctuary of the grand bedroom, Kiriel stands with his arms folded tightly across his chest, gazing silently toward his own bed. Resting peacefully together beneath the heavy coverlet, Bunny and young Alan lie fast asleep, their hands resting side by side in gentle comfort. Overcome by sheer exhaustion from her eventful day, Bunny had fallen asleep on the way, and when Alan came searching for her moments later, he simply nestled down beside her. Now both children rest soundly inside Kyriel's personal bed, entirely unaware of the young lord standing watch over them. Releasing a quiet, heavy sigh, Kyriel sits down on the edge of the mattress and rests his chin in his hand, studying the sleeping pair with a thoughtful gaze. Looking down at their peaceful faces, he privately admits to himself that he had never once in his life contemplated the thought of raising children. A distant memory from his younger years surfaces, recalling how he spent his days walking isolated and avoiding the eyes of everyone around him. He had always believed that living as an invisible shadow was the safest way to protect himself, until someone unexpectedly reached out from behind, gripping his shoulder to call his name. Kyriel silently reflects on the bittersweet memories of his distant youth, fondly recalling the gentle gaze of his devoted older brother in his darkest moments. He was the single person who had ever reached through Kyriel's lonely isolation, offering a warm smile and an open hand while promising to walk beside him into the unknown future together. When a catastrophic war erupted against the demon realm, the dark battlefields were quickly plunged into terrifying chaos and endless violence. As winged demonic creatures swarmed the skies and clashed with brave knights, dedicated holy healers worked frantically amidst the carnage to mend the devastating injuries of fallen soldiers, desperately struggling to save lives. Watching the tragedy unfold around him, young Kyriel slowly began to understand the bitter reality of the world they inhabited. It was an unforgiving society where anyone possessing extraordinary magic was harshly criticized if they failed to share it. Forced to surrender their personal lives for what demanding crowds insisted was the greater good. When his older brother successfully summoned the divine holy sword, the entire kingdom immediately hailed him as a legendary savior. Dressed in pristine white armor and surrounded glowing flowers, he graciously accepted the overwhelming weight of public expectations, stepping onto the front lines to carry the desperate hopes of all humanity on his shoulders. Yet that celebrated glory ultimately demanded the tragic ultimate sacrifice from his brother. Before he could even turn 30 years old, his beloved brother met an untimely end in the brutal war against the demon forces. With no body ever recovered from the field, young Kyriel was left standing alone in profound shock, haunted by endless grief. Driven by an unyielding desire to discover what truly happened, Kyriel eventually invaded the Demon King's grand castle. Lounging on her dark throne, the winged ruler scoffed at the mention of the legendary hero, mockingly revealing that his brother had wept at her feet, screaming until his voice went hoarse while begging pitifully for his life in his final moments. Remembering his brother's solemn silhouette on the bloody battlefield, Kyriel refused to let the Demon King's malicious words break his spirit. Battered, exhausted, and drenched in blood, he stood resolutely in the heart of the enemy's stronghold, his glowing red eyes filled with unwavering fury as he prepared to strike down the fearsome, demonic monster. Driven by his brother's lingering promise to protect him from suffering, Kyriel charged forward and thrust his sharp sword directly into the Demon King's chest. Even as dark blood pooled around them in her throne room, the terrifying monarch only let out a bitter chuckle, finding his stubborn, relentless defiance hilarious as her life slowly ebbed away. Reaching out a dark hand to touch his blood-stained face, the dying Demon King sneered that he was just as stubborn, remarkably skilled, and completely unendearing as she had been told. With those lingering words, her body shattered into fragments and dissolved into a cloud of swirling black dust, vanishing entirely from the grand hall. Though the kingdom now glorifies Lord Kyriel as the triumphant hero who led humanity to victory in the Holy War, he rides through the festively decorated streets surrounded by cheering citizens with a heavy, hollow heart, acutely aware that his celebrated title was bought at the cruel, unbearable cost of his brother's ultimate sacrifice. Desperate to escape the unbearable weight of being endlessly hailed as humanity's savior, Kiriel longed for nothing more than to fade quietly out of sight. As paper after paper clamored in confusion over his sudden disappearance from the public eye, he turned his back on the demanding realm, choosing to abandon the grand spotlight to hide his unspoken grief from the world around him. Stepping far away from the glorified hero's path he had never truly wanted, long years passed by in total isolation. Resting alone within the quiet sanctuary of his home where public expectations could no longer reach him, the solitary hero gradually accepted that his lonely fate was simply to live out his days entirely forgotten by the very kingdom he saved. Yet gazing down at the sleeping girl, Kyriel reflects on his sudden decision to step forward and become Bunny's official guardian, wondering why he invited such unexpected attention back into his silent life. Recalling her innocent smile and her earnest promise to protect those around her, he realizes her bright, selfless spirit vividly mirrored the late brother he cherished so deeply. Reaching out his hand, Kyriel gently brushes back Bunny's soft blue hair as she mutters adorably in her sleep, a rare, tender warmth softening his usually distant expression. Studying her cozy, peaceful footsies beside young Alan, the heavy sorrow that had guarded his weary heart for so many long years begins to quietly melt away inside the peaceful room. Lying down comfortably beside the two slumbering children on his grand bed, the once lonely hero rests his head on his arm, watching over them with deep, unspoken devotion. Surrounded by the soft sunlight, Kyriel finally discovers the quiet warmth of a true home, ready to embrace his new role in protecting their bright future together. Bunny stood her ground with an unyielding glare amidst the commotion. High society mothers crowded around a sobbing boy in distress, shrieking in utter disbelief over who could have inflicted such visible bruises upon their precious child. An angry noblewoman pointed accusingly across the room, placing all the blame on Bunny. Yet the young girl gripped her bag straps tightly, keeping her chin up with complete confidence that she had done nothing wrong. Just moments earlier, while she was waiting in the grand hallway for Alan, two arrogant boys had approached to mock her rabbit backpack and call her an annoying outsider. Recalling Lurie's reassuring guidance about fairy tale heroes facing trials, Bunny had maintained her composure, refusing to let their petty insults sway her. The boys continued to taunt her about her origins before rudely shoving her shoulder. They broke into loud, boastful laughter, expecting the small girl to give up and cry. Instead, Bunny remembered Lurie's secret weapon for dealing with bullies. With surprising determination, she swung her heavy rabbit backpack through the air, striking back so fiercely that the boys were left crying out in pain across the hall. Snapping back to the present confrontation, Bunny pointed her finger right back at them, plainly explaining that they were the ones who bullied her first. The green-dressed lady protested dramatically, claiming her delicate boy was far too gentle for such violence. Bunny blinked innocently and retorted that the boy was actually much chubbier than her, leaving the mother sputtering in indignation. As onlookers began murmuring amongst themselves, the woman sneered, hurling insults about uneducated orphans who lack proper upbringing. But Bunny puffed out her chest and stood tall, firmly announcing that she had a mommy and a daddy too. The enraged noble mother barks furious demands across the grand hall, threatening to call the guards and toss Bunny into prison if she refuses to bow her head. Shocked and deeply frightened by the terrifying threat of prison, Bunny recoils as her small heart freezes in utter terror. Gripping her dress tightly in hesitation, she desperately recalls Lurie's gentle advice about how she must stay in this house and become a wonderful lady. Even if the entire world turned against her, Bunny knows in her heart she did nothing wrong and refuses to give a false apology. Yet the noblewoman continues to glare down menacingly, cornering the defenseless little girl in the middle of the grand ducal hall. Surrounded by hostility and overwhelming pressure, Bunny stands completely alone with nowhere to run, as the arrogant aristocrats demand her immediate submission. She remembers Lurie's bittersweet words about how life can be cruel, forcing people to endure things they truly hate. Struggling against her own pride, Bunny tearfully wonders if this is one of those unbearable moments where she must simply swallow her tears and endure. When a nobleman sneers that young Lord Alan would be deeply disappointed in her behavior, Bunny's resolve completely shatters. Fearing she has failed the brother she longs to impress, her eyes fill with heavy tears as she tremblingly begins to stammer out an apology. Before she can bow, a cold, mocking voice echoes through the grand hall, freezing the room in absolute silence. The arrogant nobles gasp in utter shock as young Lord Alan himself steps into view, exuding a sharp, imposing authority that instantly dominates the entire room. Bunny turns in surprise as Alan effortlessly scoops her up into his arms, glaring coldly at the trembling crowd around them. With a quiet, dangerous calm, he questions who dared claim he would be disappointed, warning them that anyone mistaking him for a pushover will pay dearly. Pale with dread, the noble parents stutter in panic, desperately insisting to the young lord that Bunny violently attacked their innocent children first. They point eagerly at the fresh bruises on their sobbing sons, trying to convince him of the little girl's unprovoked violence. Ignoring their frantic accusations, Alan gently turns to Bunny and asks if the boys tormented her first. Nodding tearfully, Bunny explains how they called her ugly and shoved her around, causing Alan's red eyes to darken with cold anger as he declares their swift banishment. Alan turns his piercing gaze back to the terrified onlookers, asserting that the ones who truly owe an apology are standing right before him. He authoritatively challenges anyone in the room to step forward if they dare try to prove his precious daughter lied. Referencing the divine scales of Saintess Salami Yudia that judge ultimate truth from falsehood, Alan leaves absolutely no escape for the deceitful bullies. Trembling in sheer terror under his suffocating pressure, the guilty boy breaks down, forcing his entire family onto their knees to beg for mercy. As the arrogant noble family drops to their knees in utter humiliation, Bunny swallows her remaining tears while clinging tightly to her brother. Alan rests a soft hand upon her blue hair, quietly praising her for holding her ground. Relieved that she did not disappoint him, Bunny's anxious heart finally settles as she basks in his warm praise. With a gentle yet serious tone, Alan instructs Bunny that from now on, she must never allow anyone to mistreat or hit her. He advises her to always strike back first whenever she senses danger, making sure she knows he will always stand by her side. Comforted by his protective words, Bunny smiles sweetly and nestles tightly against his chest. Cradled securely in his arms, Bunny marvels at how warm a real human embrace feels, fondly recalling how cold Luri's body always was in comparison. Alan softly pats her back, rhythmically soothing her weary mind as her eyelids begin to droop. Feeling completely safe and cherished, the exhausted little girl relaxes into a peaceful stupor. Turning his sharp gaze back to the trembling aristocrats, Alan delivers a stern warning that leaves the noble family shivering in terror. He strictly commands them to lower their eyes whenever they meet his daughter, causing the astonished noblewoman to tremble in utter disbelief. With a dark, suffocating aura radiating around him, Alan chillingly repeats his command for them to stare straight at the floor. Overwhelmed by his terrifying presence, the humbled nobles instantly drop to their knees in a desperate bow as he calmly walks past them. Striding away from the bowing nobles, Alan ponders how out of hand the social hierarchy based on rankings has become, believing this strict dominance is the only effective way to handle their kind. Yet, as he feels Bunny breathing softly against his neck, his tired expression softens. He quietly wonders what caused this cautious little orphan to trust him so unreservedly. Deciding it is best to head straight back to his room so the tired little girl can sleep. Alan calmly walks down the long carpeted corridor carrying Bunny along with her beloved rabbit backpack. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the grand venue, people look around in confusion, wondering why the young lord is arriving so late, completely unaware of the confrontation he just settled. Deep within the quiet sanctuary of his bedroom, the steady ticking of a grand clock is interrupted by a soft knock at the door. Waking from a short and restless sleep, the young lord slowly opens his weary red eyes, staring into the dim morning light with a mix of confusion and lingering exhaustion. Sitting up heavily in his bed, he rests a palm against his forehead, struggling to shake off his deep fatigue. As a night owl who finds it nearly impossible to fall back asleep once awakened, he wonders in silent annoyance who could possibly be knocking on his door at such an ungodly hour. The heavy wooden door creaks open just an inch, revealing a tiny pair of feet waiting patiently on the threshold. Peeking her head into the shadowy room, little Bunny looks around with sparkling pink eyes, her vibrant blue hair softly glowing in the dim hallway light. Opening the door wide, the young lord finds the small girl standing right outside his room, practically radiating pure enthusiasm in the early morning quiet. Still rubbing the sleep from his eyes, he looks down and asks her gently what could have brought her all the way to his quarters at this hour. Before he can even process her presence, Bunny dashes forward without hesitation and wraps her tiny arms tightly around his leg. Hugging him with all her might, she looks up with a bright, cheerful smile and openly declares her heartfelt affection for her tall young master. Stunned by her sudden confession, he freezes in place, staring down at her in absolute bewilderment. He can hardly comprehend her erratic behavior, wondering what in the world prompted such an intense outburst of love at the very crack of dawn. Just as quickly as she embraced him, Bunny lets go and steps back with a satisfied grin on her face. After offering a swift goodbye wish, she turns around on her heel and begins trotting back away, leaving him completely flabbergasted by her incredibly abrupt departure. Reaching out in sheer disbelief, he catches her sleeve just before she can slip away into the quiet hallway. Bunny comes to a sudden halt, turning back to look up at him with wide, curious eyes and an innocent, inquiring tilt of her head. Crouching down to match her eye level, he asks her softly if she really walked all this way at 5 in the morning just to say that. Bunny responds with a cheerful smile, proudly confirming that this was her official morning greeting. Unbeknownst to him, her unexpected early visit is part of a calculated strategy detailed inside her secret notebook. The guide clearly noted that taming a cold-hearted guardian requires daily expressions of affection and constantly staying right by their side to win over their trust. Realizing that her sudden affection was simply the result of following her written instructions to the letter, the young lord bows his head with a quiet sigh. He stands there completely baffled, overwhelmed by her relentless dedication to her secret guidebook. Glancing over at the wall clock, he notes that it is barely past 5 in the morning, but another unusual detail quickly catches his attention. Looking closely at her nightdress, he notices that the fabric and her long, curly hair are distinctly damp. Leaning closer, he gently inquires why her hair is wet and whether something unexpected happened on her way over. As he wonders if she got splashed, Bunny flushes with a rosy blush, a proud and smug expression spreading across her cute face. Puffing out her chest and placing her hands on her hips, Bunny proudly boasts that she brushed her teeth and washed her face all by herself. Listening to her adorable baby phrasing, the young lord stands frozen, sweat dropping in pure, hilarious astonishment. When the young lord asks where she could have possibly learned such elaborate words, Bunny stammers before suddenly catching herself. A fleeting memory surfaces of a mysterious hooded woman who taught her to keep secrets. Gazing up with wide, innocent eyes, Bunny explains that a pretty lady used to take care of her in the past. Listening to her response, the young lord thoughtfully considers her background, realizing that, unless she was raised in an orphanage from birth, it makes complete sense that she had a primary caregiver. Scooping the tiny girl up into his arms, the young lord carries her across the quiet room toward the wash basin. Setting her down near the counter and reaching for a dry towel, he looks down at her wet face and hair. He gently asks why she had to wash up all by herself so early in the morning and inquires about the location of her assigned maid. Tenderly wiping the excess water from her cheeks and blue curls, he listens as she adorably stumbles through an explanation, describing her caretaker as a shared maid who looks after many children. Recognizing how difficult things are for those at the bottom ranks, he determines that as someone from high nobility, he must immediately assign a dedicated maid and a knight to serve his daughter. Hearing him mention her status, Bunny's bright eyes light up with pure enchantment at the thought of being a true young lady of the duchy. The young lord's expression softens as he confirms her words, internally acknowledging that although official procedures still remain to finalize the adoption, she is truly going to be his daughter. Laying her down onto the soft bed, he pulls the cozy blanket over them both and suggests resting a little longer before his afternoon duties begin. But when Bunny innocently offers to sleep on the floor instead, he winces in mild frustration, begging her not to make him feel like a terrible guardian. Bunny blinks in surprise, completely unable to understand why he would feel guilty for simply sharing his bed. Reaching out softly, he pulls her close against his side and cushions her head upon his arm. Hesitating for a brief moment, he carefully places his large hand on her back and begins rhythmic, comforting pats. Surprised by his unexpected gentleness, Bunny feels the comforting warmth of his embrace as he lulls her back to sleep. A radiant smile spreads across Bunny's face as she snuggles tightly under the plush coverlet. Recalling the secret notebook's golden advice that affection from a baby is an absolute cheat code for winning trust, she wriggles happily right against his chest, completely satisfied with her successful morning mission. Watching her eyelids gradually grow heavy, the exhausted lord feels his own lingering fatigue returning, quietly acknowledging to himself that taking care of a young child is no easy feat. As he holds her close, noticing her cozy body temperature in contrast to the naturally frigid skin of demons, he begins to question his earlier suspicions, wondering if the dark demonic aura he once felt from her was nothing more than his imagination. Finding no trace of sinister demonic energy around her now, he finally lets his guard down and closes his weary eyes. Holding the small girl protectively, in the peaceful morning quiet, the young lord quietly drifts off to sleep, fully accepting her into his heart as his daughter. When Kyriel steps into the grand council chamber, with tiny Bunny clinging closely to his side, the high priest freezes in complete disbelief. Seeing the little girl beaming so brightly among solemn officials, the old man immediately scolds Kyriel for bringing a young child into such a serious gathering. He glares down in frustration, sternly demanding to know why she is present. Unfazed by the stern reprimand, Kyriel remains perfectly composed, while Bunny dutifully recites her adorable pre-planned script, brightly declaring that she loves the young lord far too much to ever be left behind. Kyriel simply spreads his hand with a nonchalant expression, dryly claiming his hands are completely tied if the child insists on following him wherever he goes. The high priest erupts in fury at Kyriel's shameless excuse, loudly warning him to watch his glib tongue before demanding since when he ever cared about children. But as his harsh shouting echoes across the grand room, Bunny stares back in sheer horror. She is utterly shocked to see the previously gentle old man turn so unexpectedly loud and menacing. Frightened by the sudden roar, Bunny softly whimpers that those were mean words, leaving the high priest stammering in instant panic as he desperately tries to explain himself. Seizing the moment, Kyriel dryly advises his daughter never to associate with such a harsh old man, instantly provoking another loud explosion of rage from the thoroughly flustered elder. As the intense yelling reverberates through the room, Bunny clutches Kyriel's cloak with trembling hands, overcome by deep anxiety that her presence might cause her to be cast out once again. Terrified of being abandoned, she swallows her fear and prepares to apologize quickly, but before she can speak, Kyriel smoothly scoops the small girl up into his protective arms. Holding her securely, Kyriel sternly warns his father to quiet down before he deafens the child, then calmly walks over and takes his seat with Bunny resting comfortably on his lap. Realizing just how deeply his booming voice terrified the innocent little girl, the high priest cradles his chin in quiet, deeply uncomfortable remorse as he silently ponders his mistake. Clearing his throat awkwardly, the high priest softly clarifies to Bunny that his harsh anger was not directed at her. With a weary sigh, he grants her permission to remain for the assembly on the strict condition that she stays quiet, prompting both Kyriel and Bunny to give a calm, synchronized nod as she settles contentedly into his lap. Echoing footsteps signal the arrival of the Holy Knight Commander and the Saintess as they stride confidently into the meeting hall. Mocking the high priest for attempting to act like a caring grandfather, the knight commander snickers under his breath, while the saintess gently urges everyone to stop bickering so they can finally review the official report together. The saintess teasingly calls her brother a battle maniac, who is far too eager to return to monster subjugation duties. As white uniformed attendants assemble around the vast chamber, Bunny looks out from Kyriel's lap in sudden realization. She gazes around the majestic council hall, noticing that every single person present is dressed in pristine white clothing. Taking his seat at the grand table, the knight commander focuses the assembly on their critical business, bringing up a recently cleared dungeon where a mysterious item emitting a strange sound was uncovered. The hall grows quiet as the high-stakes briefing officially gets underway, setting a serious and attentive tone for the crucial discussion lying ahead. As an attendant places a glowing red orb onto the council table, the high priest explains that they took charge of the mysterious object because its incomprehensible sounds might harbor a dangerous curse. Eerie black whispers emanate from the red sphere, causing the surrounding officials to shudder in deep discomfort, as they note that the unsettling noise feels like a curse rising from the abyss. While the ominous echoes fill the room, Bunny perks up in sudden shock. Among the strange noises, she distinctly hears a desperate, panicked voice crying out for help. The high priest warns the assembly that the sound drove a linguist mad and remains completely unintelligible. Yet sitting quietly on Kyriel's lap, Bunny tilts her head in surprise, realizing she understands every word. A sudden memory flashes back to her past lessons in ancient Elven with her tutor, Luriel. Remembering how she was urged to speak up whenever she recognized the language, the little girl clenches her tiny hands in determination. Eager to help, Bunny clears her throat repeatedly to get the room's attention. She pouts adorably when the busy council ignores her, before pumping her fists with renewed resolve to make herself heard. Swallowing her hesitation, Bunny brightly shouts out that the orb is crying for help. Her sudden declaration sends shockwaves across the room, prompting an astonished explosion from the high priest. When Kyriel sternly chides his father for terrifying the child, the flustered elder quickly backs down. Clearing his throat awkwardly, he apologizes and softly asks Bunny to reveal what the voice is saying. Settled safely in Kyriel's arms, Bunny listens intently to the glowing red relic. She begins carefully translating the message, revealing that it is a desperate plea from the trapped 127th elf chieftain. Her revelation causes gasps of utter disbelief to echo across the council chamber. Stunned officials murmur among themselves, unable to comprehend that the forgotten language of the legendary ancient elves has just been spoken aloud. Sitting cozy atop Kyriel's lap, Bunny beams with proud delight at her own secret knowledge. But her moment of glory is short-lived as the mood in the room abruptly shifts. Quiet whispers of doubt ripple through the hall as the officials eye her with deep skepticism, questioning how a child could know such ancient secrets. Sensing their rising suspicion, Bunny freezes in sheer horror, terrified they will accuse her of lying. As the assembled vassals press for answers, questioning how such a small child could possibly decipher ancient texts, tension fills the grand hall. Sitting nervously in the young lord's lap, Bunny senses their growing suspicion and quickly realizes she cannot risk revealing her true identity as a long-lived demon. Determined not to be branded a liar without exposing the secret lessons taught by her demon nanny, Bunny scrambles to craft a believable cover story. Hesitating for just a brief moment, she takes a quiet breath and prepares to offer an explanation that will satisfy the watchful nobles. Blurting out that the divine beast's egg spoke to her directly, Bunny animatedly describes how sudden flashes and thumping sensations filled her mind. Her dramatic explanation catches the entire council completely by surprise, leaving the stunned nobles staring in silence as they process her unexpected claims. The vassals nod in thoughtful agreement, readily accepting that the divine egg granted her such extraordinary insight into the lost language. Watching intently, the Duke realizes her rare ability to decipher ancient Elven could finally allow them to explore countless shrouded ruins and unlock secrets lost to history. Noticing that Bunny strains to hear the faint murmurings from the red orb sitting far across the table, the young lord thoughtfully reaches out and hands the glowing crystal directly to her. Her face lights up with instant delight, and she offers him a warm, sweet expression of gratitude. Holding the red orb close, Bunny listens intently as dark energy ripples across its smooth surface, carefully piecing together the broken message within. The entire grand hall falls into an expectant quiet, watching as the little girl carefully speaks the solemn translation aloud for everyone present to hear. In a somber voice, Bunny conveys a desperate plea from an ancient era, describing a land destined to be swallowed by a dungeon, while its people fall into a deep slumber. The message implores whoever finds the crystal to hold on to hope and break their seal when the right time arrives. She completes the mysterious prophecy, explaining that the savior destined to undo the seal must possess a pure soul untouched by filth, yet be someone who has walked through the deepest darkness. As her spoken words echo through the grand chamber, a heavy silence lingers over the listening nobles. Excited whispers quickly ripple through the hall as the council marvels at the prophecy, wondering if a legendary hero will soon emerge within their own duchy. Pleased with the dramatic reaction her translation caused, Bunny proudly folds her arms and enjoys the newfound awe surrounding her. Settling back into the young lord's lap, Bunny glances up expectantly, silently waiting to receive his praise and a gentle pat on the head. But when he remains completely still, staring ahead with a distant and unreadable expression, she tilts her head in quiet, innocent confusion. Looking up at him with earnest eyes, Bunny asks softly if she did a good job. Returning from his quiet thoughts, the young lord glances down at her and tenderly strokes her hair, bringing a radiant, happy smile to her face as she soaks in his warm affection. However, behind her cheerful smile lies a chilling secret she keeps entirely to herself. The dark orb continues to echo with relentless, terrifying cries for help, driving Bunny to cling to the young lord's arms tightly, desperately seeking comfort and safety in his steady embrace. As the young lord gently pats her head, his tender touch brings a sense of quiet comfort to the anxious little girl. Feeling his soft affection, Bunny leans into his warm hand, her bright red eyes glancing sideways as she slowly relaxes after the intense translation. The gentle patting brings back fond memories of her demon nanny Luri, who used to soothe her in the exact same way. Overwhelmed by a sudden wave of longing for that familiar warmth, Bunny buries her face deep into his chest, softly whispering how much she misses Luri. Noticing her heavy eyelids, the young lord quietly tells her to go to sleep if she is tired, though Bunny sleepy protests that she is already a grown-up. Watching her snuggle closer, he inwardly regrets that his stern expression caused the little girl to worry about him. Looking down at the drowsy child clinging to him, the young lord quietly reflects on his sudden decision to take her into his care. A rare, subtle warmth softens his features as he gently cradles her, silently reaffirming his commitment to protect her from the dangerous world. Stepping in to break the quiet, the white-haired noble Klein speaks up, asking the Duke how the council should proceed after hearing the prophecy. The Duke sits in stern silence, his sharp blue eyes fixed in deep thought as he weighs the mysterious situation. Taking decisive command, the Duke orders Klein and Salame to take the red crystal back to the exact location where it was discovered for further investigation. He then solemnly announces his plans to travel directly to the capital to consult the emperor about the ominous prophecy. When the Duke begins to address what should be done with the child, the young lord's eyes darken with protective instinct. Refusing to let anyone else dictate her fate, he abruptly stands up from his seat, holding the sleeping girl securely in his arms as he prepares to exit. He coldly warns the council not to bother him or his men again unless actual demons appear, asserting that his business in the hall is done. Outraged by his sudden and disrespectful departure, the Duke sharply shouts from his high chair, reminding his son that the meeting is far from over. Unfazed by his father's anger, the young lord plainly states he only attended because he suspected the cursed crystal belonged to demons. Furious at his continued defiance, the Duke violently slams his hand onto the table, shouting at Curiel for constantly flouting his authority. Without losing his composure, the young lord quietly shushes his father, requesting that he lower his voice because his daughter is trying to sleep. The Duke freezes in total shock, utterly stunned, to hear his son openly refer to the young girl as his daughter. When the Duke angrily insists he is unfit to raise anyone and offers to find her a proper guardian, the young lord retorts with bitter contempt, asking if his father was ever capable of caring for anyone himself. Holding Bunny tightly against his chest, he silently vows never to relinquish custody of his daughter. Kyriel confronts his father with sharp contempt, bitterly accusing him of wanting to exploit Bunny's rare gift only to drive her to her death, just as he did to Kyriel's late brother. The painful truth strikes a deep nerve, leaving the Duke trembling in furious silence before slamming his clenched fist against the table in outrage. A heavy stillness settles over the grand chamber as the surrounding nobles watch the intense standoff in total silence. Softening his expression for the sleeping child resting against his chest, the young lord turns his back on the council table, quietly signaling to his companions that it is time to leave. As Kyriel walks away with calm, deliberate steps, his father seethes with helpless rage, angrily shouting after him that he has no right to claim custody of the child. Holding his sleeping daughter securely against his chest, the young lord ignores his father's furious outbursts, carrying her safely out into the light.